Hello. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back from the tea break, the walking tea. I would love to let a steward, one or two, help me hit the cup bell so that those who are still hanging around and choosing to network outside can join us. We will do a lot more networking here as we go along with the deliberations. So please, ladies and gentlemen, once again, a very warm welcome to this pre-budget dialogue for the financial year 2026-2027, as organized by the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group and partners here today. We are honored that you accepted our invitation, and if you've just joined us, we would like to say thank you. We had earlier made communication to the effect that we had been delayed by the early morning drizzle, and we're gonna have to claw back on time in order for us to move very smoothly. So without wasting much time, allow me invite our chief convener of this pre-budget dialogue, the executive director at CS-BAG, Julius Mukunda, to speak to us, but most importantly, give us the reassurance that we are here for a good cause. We are here to further the engagement as well as discussions on the budget and helping in the transformation of our country, Uganda. Mr. Julius Mukunda, please come forth. Apologies for ambushing you, but I've been told reliably that you're very flexible chief executive. Thank you so much. You're warming them up.
Hello, good morning. Good morning. Happy New Year. Welcome back from elections. For those who are promised that they will come back in the next Sanja, keep heart. For the new ones who are coming in to replace the outgoing ones, you are welcome. We are looking forward to work with you, especially on budget matters. And as such, it's really an honor that we shall have a new team. At CS-BAG and partners, we look for opportunities. Whether they told us that 60% of members of parliament did not turn up, we are very happy that now we have good fresh minds that we can also take our own chankwanzi for indoctrination. So that in the next 5 years, we have champions who are able to support us. This is our 41st pre-budget dialogue, and we continue to ensure that whatever happens, we make sure that the budget process is on top of the agenda for any country's agenda. That elections come and go, events come and go, but if there is one thing that has remained constant, is the national budget process. At this moment, let me take this opportunity to thank all of you have turned up today, despite the morning drizzle. But most importantly, civil society organizations that have consistently ensured that we bring these issues on board. At CS-BAG, we are not the ones who bring all these issues, but we work in partnerships with so many other organizations. But also those who also take it further and say an event like this should happen. And at this moment, we thank MOOBS, the Makerere University Business School Economic Forum, for the economic support that they have provided this venue. I would like to thank World Vision for continuous engagement. Kindly clap for these guys, because without their support, we don't have the. We have our comrade in arms, Mr. Arthur from Akode, Executive Director. Thanks so much for your continuous support in this. And BRAC for also continuous support in this work, plus ACSA for this generosity. CSBAG also wishes to thank Education Out Loud from Oxfam, I think they are here, who have for the last 3 years also supported this program. Today my work is very simple. Is to welcome you. But probably before that, can we say a short prayer and then we start my welcoming remarks?
Ladies and gentlemen, I would have undertaken that very noble task of praying, but I would love to ask any one of us who believes and feels the anointing of the Lord to help us in that. Oh, we have a lady right here.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Prosim Soke, board member, Kasita, Uganda, in charge of the women's affairs. You are all welcome. Let us humble ourselves. Let us say, the grace of our Lord. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all, now and evermore. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so my task is really very simple. To welcome you here, but also to give you a simple background on where we have come from and why we do this kind of work. This is the time when the National Budget Framework paper has been released, and we try to ensure that what are the issues that are there? Where would we want, as citizens of Uganda, where should we be going? And then we collect these issues, and then we engage the Minister of Finance, members of Parliament, and every other person. And I asked my team that we did something like this last year, but a number of you, I know you ask, but we do all these things, do they result into anything? And I thought should quickly give you just a small brief on a number of things we do and how and the uptake so far that we make. Because in most cases, some people will say, oh, but you say these things do things ever change? Every time we start this particular work, you'll find out that we have proposals to the budget. And we bring all the proposals that we can. And after some time, we sit down and reflect. Out of what we have done, what has government taken? So, for example, in the last financial 2025-2026, when we engaged on agro-industrialization program, we had 9 issues raised to government. 6 of the issues were taken. When we engaged the Tourism and Trade Development Program, we had 7 issues and 4 were taken. Natural resource, we had 11, 3 were taken. Maybe here one of them was we should ban Kavera, and Kavera is still a problem, we can't ban it. Human capital development, we had 9, 4 were taken. Development plan implementation, 7, 5 were taken. Regional development, where governments are, 5, 3 were taken. National development plan, we had 24, 11 were taken, and grand total, we had 72 and 36 were taken. 50% of the proposals were taken. So a number of issues come up. Okay. A number of issues, of course, come up. These are the numbers and of the adoptions and what we have done. But also, I think we need to look at a few of a few of the examples that we pride ourselves in. Some of the proposals adopted, we look at, one of the things we have been engaging government is, please, we need to take that painful decision. If you have a project that is not functioning, let us stop it. And we are glad that more than 50 of the non-functioning projects were removed from public investment plan to create fiscal space. We are also happy that in this financial, which is ending, domestic areas allocations were increased by 1.4 trillion. If we recall, I think this is when we said that it would take government, at the rate of 200 billion they were budgeting, it would take them 54 years to finish paying all the areas. But remember how areas also affect private sector in terms of their liquidity, but also it's also a discipline issue when accounting officers commit government even if they have money. Key finance frameworks, including climate finance, which were also launched. 20 billion was allocated for disaster preparedness. Directorate of Environment, so its budget increased by 55%. So you will really find a number of proposals that we have done. And I think if you go on our website, you'll be able to see, are these some of the things that have been taken. So our work is not in vain. We continue to ensure that at least we do accountability of the work that we have done, but also to ensure that we continue to engage government on some of these things. I don't know. This thing is not working. Is that? I think that's the end. So there are a number of those issues that we know that we contribute to, and a list is long. So please feel free. Let's listen in. And as I end on a special note, I would like to also recognize the presence of the representative from the Permanent Secretary to Treasury, Mr. Ali. Ali, you are most welcome for coming. You know, our relationship with the Ministry of Finance, we try to ensure that we provide them with better alternative proposals, but also they provide us information so that at least we can have a base upon which we can be able to engage government better. Add, please, our gratitude. You send it to the Permanent Secretary of Treasury, and we hope that the discussions that we have here can be able to influence what is going to take place in the coming financial year. We know that the ministerial policy statements are almost going to get out, and as such, I look forward that all of us can still be engaged in this process. Like I said, my job was simple. I would like now to invite Irene Kagoya, who is the Associate Director for Advocacy at World Vision, to come and give us opening remarks. Thank you so much, and be blessed.
Thank you, Mr. Julius Mukunda. As Ms. Kagoya makes her way, I would like to encourage us to come and fill up the seats at the front, and we allow those who will come later or who are streaming in to fill the seats at the back. That arrangement is also going to help, especially when it comes to the officials of government as they're watching the recommendations we are on here. It's a good idea that you are at the front, and you know what that does to us. So I encourage you, sir, come forth. Please make your way so we can fill these seats, and then we can proceed pretty smoothly. Thank you, gentlemen. Others, please do the same. Madam.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Julius Mukundwa, for giving us that preamble. It really reaffirms the value of these processes. Government officials represented here, academia, civil society, media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to everyone. As mentioned, my name is Irene Kagoya, and I'm the Associate Director Advocacy with World Vision Uganda. Allow me start by bringing you greetings from our National Director, Mr. Jeremiah Nyaga, who is unable to be with us. Nevertheless, I'm here to represent him and equally deliver opening remarks on his behalf. You are all most welcome to the 41st Civil Society Pre-Budget Dialogue, an annual forum that provides us the opportunity to reflect on budget processes, particularly the FY2026-27 budget, its potential to support critical service sectors and deliver economic transformation that we so desire. The theme of the dialogue, repurposing the national budget for economic transformation and sustainable growth, is well aligned to the financial year 2026-2027 budget theme that states full monetization of Uganda's economy through commercial agriculture, industrialization, expanding and broadening services, digital transformation, and market access. Friends, this theme challenges government and other stakeholders to invest in sectors with a multiplier effect that can double the gross domestic product and sustainably transform communities. I would like to commend government on the development priorities set out in the National Development Plan 4 and the 10-fold growth strategy, which informed the FY26-27 budget priorities. The 10-fold growth strategy recognizes people and their productivity as a means of development and an end goal for the country's development aspirations. While the exponential economic growth in Uganda is based on agricultural, industrial development, tourism, mineral-based development, science, technology, ICT, innovation, including creative arts, we urgently need to mainstream and invest in human capital development in each financial year if we are to meet the ambition of the US $500 billion economy. For 40 years, World Vision Uganda has invested in programs and advocacy initiatives aimed at improving the lives of vulnerable communities. One of the major challenges we've encountered through our work has been the structural and systemic challenges that are largely driven by inadequate financing. You will all appreciate that while there's been improved access to health services, the functionality of these facilities can do better in terms of increasing essential health supplies, access to wash services, and staff motivation. The education sector for Uganda is about 2.7% of Uganda's GDP. This is below the 4.2% of many of the East African countries. 12 million people in Uganda still do not have access to basic water supply, and 38 million of these also do not have access to safely managed sanitation. A study by the United Nations Population Fund on the cost of inaction on teenage pregnancy estimated that health costs associated with teenage motherhood alone amounted to 360 million, an equivalent of 43% of the Ministry of Health budget in a year. Now, more than ever, government needs to invest in its human capital by ensuring that learners access and receive quality education, that health facilities are well equipped, and that social protection structures are functional and meet the needs of its people. As I conclude, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to all the CS BAG partners and stakeholders who have put in effort to organize this forum, and also who have continuously mobilized and strategically positioned civil society actors to influence budget processes leading up to the passing of the national budget. And so I'd like to thank you all and wish everyone a fruitful engagement.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kagwe, for that speech. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of clawing back on time, just something that I picked up in that particular speech that aligns well with something I read earlier on the Citizens Economic Charter that is outed by CS Park, and it looks at key areas that Ugandans want leaders to champion. And I'm glad, Madam, you talk about affordable electricity and wider grid access, improved tax literacy and accountability, a national health insurance scheme, stronger emergency and medical services, well-equipped health facilities, safe water access, better wash in schools and health centers, as well as adequate education financing, as well as reliable agricultural extension services. We will be hearing many of such issues here, but allow me right about now invite the indefatigable Dr. Fred Muhumuza, Director at MUBS Economic Forum, to talk to us about restructuring and repurposing the budget for tenfold growth. You're most welcome, sir.
Thank you, session facilitator. Allow me to recognize all the protocol. In the room are my board members and the Economics Forum at MUBS. And the board members include a lot of my bosses, including my principal. But he has stepped out, will be recognized when he comes back. Mr. Muveru, you're welcome. And thank you for making it. That's the Manufacturers Association. You cannot do development minus manufacturing. So if you want to really do the relevant research, you get to the manufacturers and work with them. Allow me to request that we take a moment of silence. You may stand, you may remain seated, to recognize the contribution of Professor Ochieng to meetings of this nature. He passed on sometime and will be buried within this period. Let's have a moment of silence. May his soul rest in peace. For some of us who may not be aware, the Uganda Economics Association mentored and nurtured us in economic spaces in the 90s and was formed by people like him to have dialogues of this nature. And as students of economics, we began to get a feel of what the economics is like in the practice. And that's what I really want to present today. I hope as I do this, my presentation will find its way on the screen so that we can go through it. What am I really going to be saying in this presentation? There are many things I will be running through it. Repurposing the budget requires restructuring the budget. Because the budget is already too tightly fixed up. You are like in a straitjacket. You've seen those traffic jams. If they find you on a one-way street, you're stuck. That's why I avoid one-way streets. I try to use the two-way, because there you can ask the guy here and the guy there, please hold a bit. If cashier is not looking, you climb a pavement and go back the other way. So how do we create space for the budget to be a budget so that it can be repurposed? So it's not going to be about numbers. It's about what is the structure of the budget. I hope this allows me to move. Where do I point it in heaven? I'm trying, okay. So that's going to be my context, really, that we have a trilemma facing Uganda, 3 challenges to look at. The goals and objectives of government. I will not speak to those because my bosses are here. who formulate them, they will speak to them. In any case, they are all known to us. How do we deal with unemployment? But we're introducing aspects of security. You possibly have heard the West regretting why they should not recolonize us. One of the things Trump told the EU was, we regret giving Greenland back to the Danes. So we have a lot of security issues both at home and abroad. The budget challenges, and as I've said, it's a structural issue, not the numbers. Many times we discuss the budget by numbers. Today I want to shift gears to what are the issues. And then we'll look at the lessons we have found out of our research. The locus on rebalancing or balancing the trilemma, we have security, development, and politics. They give us the context of what appears to be a mixed ideology. The president still believes we are following private sector-led growth. But while you wake up, you hear money has been given to private sector, but from a government budget. Now, that's a mixed ideology. We don't know who should be funding what. And there are certain things coming back which in the 90s we had resolved. I know many of you hate structural adjustment program, but every drug comes with a side effect. Now you don't throw away the drug because of side effects. You mentioned the side effects, we will deal with them. Structural adjustment was about how do you deal with Uganda Airlines. Remember we had it? Under that period, we resolved it. It's back on our tables. And people are still debating, is it a management issue? It is even more of a financing issue than the management issue. If you look at Auditor General's reports, we still need to be putting about 250 billion every year into Uganda Airlines for a foreseeable future. That was a similar case in the 90s. We closed that tap, and people have still been flying, by the way, and the numbers have increased. So how do we deal with those kinds of issues? We still have a lot of private entities. So there's the politics and the mixed ideology. We'll look at presenting a case of the state, those who hold the state power. I am saying this is not a message to government, but to those who form government. Those who hold state power form government. So the discussions of the budget, when you go structural, you discuss with the state authorities, Mr. Museveni and his team. Then they will come and say, what kind of parliament do we need? What kind of strategy do we need to develop the country? So there is reducing the budget is the argument, but should we reduce the budget when we have these needs to do? We need to realign it and repurpose it for enhancement of growth, which requires more resource mobilization. You cannot mobilize resources when the economy is not growing. Now, Uganda thinks we can mobilize the resources and then grow the economy. That's the ideological issue. Some of us look at it from the other side. Grow the economy and the revenues will come through. The research we have seen is our low tax to GDP ratio is actually responsible for faster growth. Countries in sub-Saharan Africa which have high tax to GDP ratios have lower growth than Uganda. So at the point where we are, tax to GDP is not the problem. It's actually a benefit. Because what drives growth is disposable income. Disposable income is your money minus tax. So the failure of government to take my money is contributing to growth more than if government ever succeeded in taking the money from me. And for me as an economist, I'm like, that's a good thing. So let's change the discussion. How do you guys spend your money? You all know, you've just been putting children back in school, where government is putting very little. I was looking at fees for Budo. 2,999,000. They just left there 10,000 to make it 3 million. We call that odd pricing. Eh? You just leave a small thing because the figure you're interested in is the 2. Most people see the first figure. But that's 10,000 shy of 3 million. So is that a government-aided school or is it a PTA school? Cutters of people's own monies. So people left with money do better than government as of now. But we can't rule out government's role, and this is the discussion we want to have as we do the budget. So enhancement of growth is going to be key. And I put the trilemma there in that triangle. One of the strongest, are there engineers in the room? Engineers will tell you the strongest shape is a triangle. That's why you see the arches in churches. You will see the arches, the Ginger Bridge. Or the triangle is the strongest. But the base is national security, both regional, global, and law and order. The papers have been telling us about crime rate. That's an economic issue. The military is only coming in to try and solve it, but it's actually an economic issue. We can only solve it by coming to the right-hand side, a sustainable, resilient, and inclusive economy. But what is burdening us is the top. The top is not exerting weight on those two. The politics, the structure of government, as prescribed by the state. In this discussion, I want to argue, don't issue a bond of 16% for 2 years to go and build government offices. That's a wrong way of assigning money. That's a distortion in the system. If you want to build government offices, tell us, I have land here, I need a government office. Private sector will come and build it, operate it, and transfer it to government after 30 years. So the 1 trillion you need to put up government offices, the private sector has their money. Let them bring it. Now, instead of looking for 1 trillion in 1 year, you only need to find 1 trillion over 30 years. That's the repurposing we need to do, but after restructuring the budget. And that's the conversation we want to have today. The budget challenge is structure and not the numbers. One can have their cake and eat it, but thereafter don't ask for the cake. Hold your silence. And what are we saying? Many times government borrows money, spends it on items that directly or indirectly offer little productivity and production to create the repayment. You end up with a repayment snag because where the money went, we have not realized the benefits. Now we are borrowing to refinance, which is not a good thing for us. But to do that, that's not the problem. We need to get back and say, what can we knock out of the budget by way of items? Debt management through refinancing is not a solution. It gives you short-term relief on your liquidity aspects, but you have not solved the problem because the debt principle still sits in your numbers and still attracts interest. So we need to be targeting how do we lower the refinancing component, which today is quite significant. The increasing interest payment. The last figure I had seen was close to 30% of tax, but I think the figure has gone up. If you're going to be spending 30 to 40% of revenues to pay interest on debt, then you're going to have a problem financing the aspects that drive growth. But also you cannot repurpose the budget because there's no budget to repurpose. Going by our priorities, debt management takes first priority. So by the time you are done with debt priority, you have little money left to assign to the core activities. So my conversation is, let's restructure the budget, free some resources, and give our colleagues at the Ministry of Finance flexibility to now allocate where the money should be going to grow our economy. This is really the budget as of the NBFP December 2025. Numbers do change. But as I said, this is not about the numbers. Look at the left-hand side column and see the items there that are really not for debate. Number one, external debt repayment. We don't debate that. 3 trillion. As of then, the figures could have gone up. Project support is external financing. That one, you don't again debate. It's carved into the projects, the roadworks. So you're not budgeting there to debate with Parliament. Domestic refinancing, as you can see, 12 trillion. At that point, we expect it to decline, but I'm very, very cautious that it might actually not decline because of the politics that we have seen up there that is emerging. The MPs asked for how much for their cars? They are the one individuals we buy cars for and fuel them, and yet these are private cars. How can that be? That government buys a car and fuels it and you call it a private car? Now, those are things to think about. But let them first come in and we'll see how we discuss with them later on. Maybe those are the things that meant that 60% of them never came back. So if these ones want to stay, they may want to rethink how they handle the society, not just at the voting time, but earlier. Society wants services over the 5 years. So when you look through appropriation in aid, I've seen my friends from Local Government Finance Commission. That figure seemed to have been like that for 10 years. What's happened to the local governments? Every time I look at appropriation in aid, which is local government contribution, the figure has not reached 300 billion. So what is happening? But we have some information, money is not finding its way into the mainstream of the budget. I know a city that declares hardly anything for adverts, and yet it is full of billboards where people are paying. These are issues, they are not about the number, they are about what do we do to create the resource that we can repurpose, right? Even if it is repurposed from the thieves. So you begin to see that the challenge here, I found some items here we will be discussing later, number 16, domestic debt prepayment to BOU. BOU is financing government. That act can be inflationary. So if BOU is committed to managing inflation, we need to rebate number 16. We never used to have that in the 90s. We cut it out as the way of managing inflation. Obote had it and had a lot of inflation. So managing inflation is not about interest rates, but also can you curtail the money you put into the system? And looks like BOE is putting some money into the system. We want to have a conversation there. But that conversation will come from the mainstream of the budget. You see all those folks going for a very small thing. I removed the hands. But those are the programs and sectors. So whether you want to give them sufficient money, you don't have it. Debt management alone is close to 50% of the budget. Public administration is 12 to 13%. Human capital development is 12 to 13%. Wages is 12 to 13%. And these are not for debate. Now, by the time you are done with the obligations government must meet, there is no money left to allocate. So the repurposing will require us to first increase what is on the plate. Somebody wanted to be Lusania in government. Now that he didn't make it, we can pick his Lusania and bring it. But not just the Lusania, we need to put some food on it. This is Ramadan. I know we break it by eating on the same common plate, but there must be food. So possible declines according to the budget, the NBFP, even the sectors that are going to drive the budget, they are experiencing declines in the budget. And it's not to say that those who have been given these 12 to 13% are fully funded. They also still have deficits. So for me, the question is an insufficient budget. How do we grow the budget? How do we remove the clutter and create some space? But this has created us some challenges, as I've discussed already. You can see the bars, 100% of what we've been borrowing over the last 10 years. The bulk of it goes into refinancing the debt, and I'll put that in red. Not that because I'm putting on red, but red signals an alarm. You need to be conscious about that. So every time we borrow, a good portion of what we borrow goes back to refinance the debt. Only little is going to finance other budget items. And the tenfold growth is sitting in these other budget items. How do we change that color to take over the entire borrowing? That's a discussion that I really would want us to walk out of here with thoughts that are emerging out of our research. We have done it before. Some of us, as I said, have been in the policy space for the last 30 years. You can see that from September 1993 up to 98, and I made these quarterly averages of government credit from the banking sector at intervals of 5 years. Government was actually saving on the banking sector rather than borrowing from there. How do we get back to that level? That will leave the banking sector to finance the private sector. And we go to find our own ways of how best do we react. This is repurposing the budget. That part of the money leaving the banking sector coming to government should actually be left to the private sector to do what they do best. But then how do we finance government? These are trade-offs. These are dynamics that we need to have a conversation on. But you can see how that story changed around 2013. The negatives disappear and the positives simply shoot up. So what happened from 2013? Policy changes and certain things. Good enough, it is still the same leadership. So that one is a constant in the mathematical equation of primary 7. I tried to put that in graphical form so that you can see that the plane for domestic and government borrowing took off in 2013 and is not about to come back. But there was a history of 20 years before that when actually we did not borrow. How did we do it? Even when we borrowed, it was really marginal. There are proposals that we can come up with, and there are certain things we are going to controversially leave with you to think about. So how do we restore that? One, reaffirm budget ceilings. Let the ceilings be ceilings. You guys, doesn't matter what you debate here, that ceiling can't move. It was put there for a purpose. But many times people move ceilings because certain things have come up, which things you can really negotiate. I'm here to testify that I have seen president's letters. We have engaged at technical level. We have gone back to the president and he has changed his guidance on some of these letters. So it is possible to go back and have a conversation with the president, and that is how we had maintained some of these borrowings that shouldn't be there. That is how Uganda Airlines was sold then. That is how Lint Marketing Board was liberalized and private. There were a lot of discussions in the 80s and the early 90s, and the Uganda Economics Association was part of those discussions. So these forums, we want to have them more and more. The full cost of the supplementary budget must be captured. It is not just that a supplementary is a supplementary. The supplementary comes at a cost. You are drawing money from the private sector area, possibly into inefficient areas or things that could have waited. There is a cost to that. I've been looking at interest rates in Uganda. They are the highest in the region. I forgot to put that slide here. Comparing with Rwanda, Tanzania, Kenya, who are our competitors, we have the highest level of interest rates. Flying up there, the rest are in the range of 8 to 12%. We are in the range of 18 to 19%. And that's for prime borrowers. And I'm yet to see a prime borrower in this room. Anybody who is chairman of MTN like Imbire, those are prime borrowers. The rest of us are in our ranges of 30 to 40%. You can't build an economy with those kinds of interest rates. So that's part of the cost we want to discuss. If you are to get tenfold growth, lending rates must come down. How we do that is a conversation we should be having today. We are talking of rethinking state-owned enterprises, but also there are those that the state has an interest, but they are private companies. And they are drawing public resources. And we have checked Auditor General's reports. They indicate the government's interest is not even recorded anywhere legally. Government puts in money, but its share value is not known and is not on the books of accounts. So how do we deal with those? Those are conversations of restructuring in order to repurpose the budget. There are also entities. I was looking through one of my bosses, Charles Mbire, is not here, but he's chairman of MTN. Between November, and I'm trying to find out exactly what happened. Between November and February 6th, the share value of MTN went up by about 116 shillings. That gave MTN earnings of $316 billion. Share value. So MTN as a telecom company was able to do something, increase its share value, and in the process of 8 weeks, earned $316 billion. So what is happening? Why are you having UTL, which can't generate its own money and is waiting for finance to give it, when MTN is innovating in this market and global markets and raising their own money? Shouldn't we list UTL or let it go? This is a conversation we should have. Why do we have UTL? Who has a UTL number? Who has missed out on any communication? So if it died, would you lose your hair or your sleep? So why are we keeping it on the books? These are tough decisions, but as I said, they are not for government, they are for the state. Mr. Museveni has got to pronounce himself on this matter. I know my colleagues in finance are not comfortable with some of the things we do because they really struggle to say why this, why not this. But this is a conversation we need to take to wherever it will go. And I think we are going to go there. Possibly by May, when the swearing in happens, we'll have made some progress. So we need to drop certain items, this is my argument, so that we can free those resources to be repurposed. Right? It's a game of structure, not the numbers. I go also again to monetary policy. The increase in money supply, which is partly, as I've said, linked to the central bank itself, has triggered inflation and restricting the private sector as the way of managing inflation. A CBR of 9.75%, ladies and gentlemen, is too high if you want tenfold growth. We've got to take it like that. As long as we have a 9.75% CBR, forget about the tenfold growth. Japan is borrowing at 1.2%. China the other day cut from 2.57 downwards. Uganda is maintaining 9.75. But these are our competitors. This is where we're importing from. So do we want tenfold growth? In reality, we need to repurpose, but first of all, restructure. The thing we called rationalization, we missed it. So the conversation here is serious and goes to monetary policy and fiscal policy. Restructure those two for tenfold growth to happen. But as of now, it will not happen because of these constraints. Those interest rates, as I've said, are increasing the cost of doing business. They are reducing investments and aggregate demand and undermining competitiveness. You can't create jobs with the current level of cost of doing business. We actually get driven to a recession. A recession, ladies and gentlemen, is when you have negative GDP growth in 2 quarters that follow each other. That these 3 months, the economy shrank. The next 2 months, the economy shrank. Then you have a recession. But we are using medical practice to say, don't wait for cancer to get to stage 4. Can we detect it at stage 1 or 2? So economics gives us tools that tell you when you are headed towards a recession before it pops up. And that's the inverted U hypothesis. What is it really? You look at the difference between your short-term and medium to long-term returns on government papers. If that difference is inverted, you are headed for a recession. It means the short-term and the long-term are catching up with each other. So while we want to shift the government bonds from 2 years to 20 years, people are not going there. They are very cagey and earning good returns in the 91-day treasury bills. So you can see the blue line is the 91, 3 months. The orange line is the 10-year bond. The gray is the difference between the two, and it's giving us that shape of an inverted U. That's a signal of an economy headed towards a recession. Now, you may not get the recession, but heading towards the recession is not a good thing. It means you are growing at a very low rate. For me, this is a signal we may not realize the double-digit growth rate that we require to do tenfold growth. The signs are already sitting with us. We also made a switch and said, what if we test the 10-year and the 2-year bonds? Again, you see an emerging U shape in the gray line below. So we need to be seriously thinking on what do we change in the economic system. One of the things, the energy subsidy on manufacturing is distortionary. The president said manufacturers must pay 5 US cents. It looks a good thing. But if the cost of electricity is 9 to 11 cents, who is paying the difference? Two things emerge. Government is going to go in the banking sector and borrow to pay that difference. But when it goes there, the same manufacturers will find interest rates of 30%. They thought they had their cake in the morning. Now in the evening, the cake is being taken away by a more worse evil. But also because of that, the roads are not going to be done. So they will face that challenge as well. But worst of all, or rather to compound the challenges, you are not going to have sustainability in the energy sector because you're operating below the cost recovery tariff. And that now is the new problem for the manufacturers. Stability of the power is the problem, not the cost of the power. To stabilize the power, we need to increase the tariff. That is a discussion with the state, not for Ministry of Finance. They have an instruction. But we want to carry this evidence to the one who will have that discussion with the manufacturers themselves. China is increasing solar. Uganda still believes we must generate thermal or hydro, I don't know what, and then transmit it. China is saying, no, you can generate power for the communities right where they are. Why don't we do solar panels? So what China had done, by 2010, China had 0.1 gigawatt of solar energy. 15 years later, they have 1,063 gigawatts of solar energy. Solar, you don't need to move it from Jinja to Karamoja. Karamoja has enough sunshine. Just do it there. Just do it wherever. And a lot of our power needs can be met through solar. So that's another form, rather than financing and giving all the money to the energy sector, we can rethink the mode of delivery of energy to some of these places. And then we avoid the transmission line costs with the associated land compensations. This is the story of China. Over the last 15 years, China in red has added more solar power than the rest of the world combined. Now, if you want to be as competitive and grow like China, and China is one of the countries that has done more than even tenfold growth, it's not just about power, but strategy. So it's not about what strength have you thrown in. What is your strategy? They still use a lot of coal, as you can see in black, but over the last 10 years, they have gradually included that orange of solar, they're increasing wind, they're increasing hydro, and other things. China still buys 99% of Iran's oil. And Iran does 1 million barrels a day. Uganda is targeting 60,000. That's how much China guzzles oil to grow its economy. So to grow this economy, we're going to need a lot of energy. But where is this energy going to come from? Not the current model of energy generation and delivery. We've got to rethink. This, for me, the restructuring before you can repurpose. I put a picture there. Growing up in Kabalega Secondary School 42 years ago, the Obote government used to bring a 14mm anti-aircraft gun in our compound. Those are the weapons they had deployed to fight Mr. Museveni in the bush. Rwakasisi was Minister for Security. But tomorrow, we'll mark 42 years, exactly the 20th of February, 1984, when General Saleh came and attacked Masindi. He never took away those guns. He simply destroyed them. He took the other guns, AK-47, bazookas. He knew he needed those guns because later on they actually got them. Surambaya, Mambas. But at that point in time, that was not a gun to have. So what am I saying? Stay focused on your future dreams and targets, but do not front load them. There is going to come a time when Uganda will be processing coffee, but that time is not now. There's going to come a time when Uganda will be removing people's brains, taking them out for 2 months, bringing them back, specialized hospitals, I don't know, but that time is not now. Can we repurpose the budget, but after restructuring? What is it that we need now? Increase capitation for education from 70 shillings per day to possibly 1,000 without breaking the budget. That's the conversation we are having. So what things are there? And this conversation should go to the generals. That's why I'm saying those who hold the state power. Where are the 14mm guns that they should not carry away, but simply destroy them and put them in the cooler so that we can move on with what we need as of now? I was in Masindi, so this is an experience I went through personally. I even have the scars of that war that day. I'm only not a commissioned officer, but in my own right, I have a right to say I was part of it. Industrialization agenda. We really need to grow by industrialization. Everybody is saying we must industrialize, but how do you industrialize? Right from the energy component, the land component. As I've said, Uganda is in the business of buying land. And here I am saying freeze any new purchases of land. Minister of Finance, please. Can we freeze purchases of land and first consolidate what we have bought? Auditor General is telling us there is land that is not even known by the entities that bought it because they have no legal right on it. Can we first consolidate what government owns before we buy new pieces of land? That will release the budget. Because I know this, some of my friends will not be happy with me to say this because they did in the business of government buying land. But me, I'm talking the facts. That might free you from some 200 billion for the coming year, but also you secure the trillions of the land you already have. Identify what kind of industries we need or will be needed, and then see what nature of infrastructure they need. Energy, roads, rail, human resources, and social services. I know entities are buying land in the middle of nowhere where there is no energy line, there is no road, and then they say, we need these things there. When you went there to buy land, what were you thinking? So the Ministry of Finance is being planned by others. And I'm saying some of these things we need to decentralize the power at the Ministry of Planning. Let not everybody drive us crazy. This is one way we can be able to repurpose and follow the entire value chain. Uganda is earning close now to $6 billion. It's not our money, but at least we are part of that value chain of gold export. It comes in, we refine it and take it out. So what is our stake in the gold? Refining. So what should be our conversation in the coffee? Not processing. Can we focus on 20 million bags of coffee per year? We have already agreed we need a coffee tree, and only 30% meets this criteria. Coffee tree that is high yielding, fast maturing, drought tolerant, and disease resistant. 4 characteristics. Only 30% of the coffee trees in Uganda meet that criteria. If we can change the others, let's focus on that first for the next 5 years. That all our coffee trees will be meeting that criteria. We will hit the 20 million bags without even increasing the acreage. Now, if the current crop is giving us, which is 8.7 million bags of 60 kilograms, is giving us 2.4 billion, we will multiply that by 2.5. Coffee alone will bring this country $6 billion, far above oil. Using the same land, same labor, we just change the type of tree. This is 10-fold growth agenda. So we need to repurpose the budget to meet those 4 bits of criteria that we have been with. As for processing coffee, I know some friends of mine will not be happy, but it's not about being friends of anybody. Doctors, we look for them, we even pay them, and they tell us the bad news. And then we appreciate the bad news and work on it, and we continue living. I saw a discussion. I was calculating if we exported the coffee we did in 2025, divide or get the number of kilograms per day, and put the kilograms at 6,000 shillings, which is what the kiboko is attracting. Coffee alone was giving 8.65 billion shillings per day to the coffee farmers. How do you mainstream people into the money economy? Don't just broadcast resources, repurpose. But to what? So coffee alone, what if I add on fish? What if I do some other enterprises for agricultural enterprises? And one of the research we want to do with the Ministry of Finance and for the Ministry of Finance is we have reduced people outside the money economy working with OWC. General Carlo, thank you very much. Those are the OWC team people we work with. They moved out of the uniform and put the guns down and go to the other ways, Operation Wealth Creation. Together, working with different entities of government, people outside the money economy moved from 68% to 34%. But we are saying what moved them, because you want to consolidate that. You want to amplify that and move more. We used to do these researches in the 90s. We are not so much into them, but we are coming back. Coffee is one of these. As you can see, these monies are significant. And I will be getting back to that shortly. I want to get to the exchange rate. I have heard people talk on one side. It is good to have a stable currency. The economics of it is at what level? Stabilizing a patient in ICU is a good thing, but those doctors are not sleeping yet. That patient must leave ICU, go to HDU, go back to the patient ward, and back into their homes. So a stable currency, you want to celebrate a quarter. You still have work to do. Where should it be? So like we have the inflation policy, we want to work together with government, the responsible entities, Ministry of Finance and Bank of Uganda. What should be our foreign exchange policy? We don't seem to have any. Stabilizing is not the policy. At what level should it be to give us competitiveness? And by the look of the numbers we have picked from the central bank, we've been losing competitiveness because of an overvalued currency. The National Budget Framework paper is showing us that if we depreciated the shilling by 10%, That will increase public expenditure by 1.3 trillion because government will be spending more shillings to get every dollar. Not a nice thing if you look at it from that angle. Secondly, it will offset the revenue gains by 275 billion. Of course, those will increase the deficit. But look at this. Based on the USD 2.4 billion exports of coffee, that will increase earnings by the farmers by 886 billion shillings. Economy is about trade-off. So if government is going to lose 275 billion and households earn 886 billion, what should I vote for? Remember, it is households that drive growth. And when they spend their 886 billion, they will be paying taxes as well. So part of the other one is going to be recovered. Now, we are proposing to do a more serious, all-embracing analysis to say if you shock the economy this way, what are the multiple effects across the entire economy in order to inform policy? Before we shed tears, we might shed tears of joy. Say, thank you, this happened, it wasn't a good thing, but the outcome is better. That's the policy discussion we want to have as a way of coming up with what should Uganda's foreign exchange policy be. So the exchange rate policy, as we're saying, it will increase aggregate demand, consumption. These are things I've already talked about. But by the look of the real effective exchange rate policy, which measures Uganda's competitiveness with its trading partners, we have been losing ground. This is the real effective exchange rate trend over the last 25 years. When the shilling was allegedly weak, we were competitive. You can see the moving upwards. Since we began to get so strong, the dollars came in and the coffee came in, we've been losing competitiveness. The shilling is too strong at 3.5, 3.6, 3.4. Where should it be is a discussion we shall have with the ministry after the research. Because I don't want to say it should be here, so the numbers will tell us. But we need to restore that upward trend of competitiveness. Right now, you go and buy tomatoes from a vendor on Mitiana Road. I thought Mitiana grow their own tomatoes. But this woman was asking me, do you want Kenyan tomatoes or Ugandan tomatoes? A roadside on Mitiana Road is asking me whether I want Kenyan. We are talking about tomatoes here, not mobile phones. This is how much we have lost competitiveness. That even carrots and tomatoes are being, how do you grow the economy when the Kenyans are subsisting like parasites and ticks on you? These are issues of policy and they have implications on the budget. I should soon be finishing. So the research we want to do is that the currency is actually overvalued. I've been reading one of the central bank papers. By 2023, the misalignment or the overvaluation was in the range of 3 to 5%. So it's okay to allow the shilling to depreciate a bit. That was 2023. 5 years later, it has actually increased. So we are proposing, we are going to be working with the Ministry of Finance and the central bank to do, I will not take you through the dynamics of what we are going to do. These are doctors' things. But there is what we call a social accounting matrix and a computable general equilibrium model, which says if I administer this here, what is the impact on the overall economy and all the different aspects? We hope we'll be able to do this to inform the next budget cycle. The current one is already ongoing. But budgets are budgets, we keep with those discussions. So as I conclude, one is in order to realize the tenfold growth, it is strategy before strength. It is not the 70 trillion budget, that is strength. Where is it being directed? That is the repurposing, which is strategy. But we are saying even the 70 trillion does not give Ministry of Finance flexibility to target the areas which we should be targeting. So one, we need to be rational and restructure the budget items to free resources and avoid undue borrowing. Once we do that, we will be able to get the prices right, and I've talked about interest rates, I've talked about exchange rates and consumer rating. Once we get those right, the private sector and investments will invest for growth. Today, if anybody gets $1 billion, they want to put it in a government bond. A government bond does not create jobs. It does not create services and goods. But it gives you interest to the tune that now URA's collection, 30% is coming to pay your interest. You two are going to turn up in a hospital and it doesn't function. Then you'll notice your interest from a government bond can't help. So how do we trade this? You are going to find that very bad road going to I don't know where. Then you realize your interest from a government bond doesn't help. Crime will increase and you'll be hit by a paver on the northern bypass. Or you are relative. Some of you have armored vehicles, but still a relative is not secure. So how do we do national security using the government budget and building the economy? Eventually, we'll be able to repurpose the public finances to core initiatives that support growth and security. Has God moved? I want to appreciate the Ministry of Finance. This is their work, so we are sharing with you what we share with them. Sometimes it takes two to tango. The beauty with economists, we don't have to agree. But out of arguments, agreement emerges. And this is what we are trying to have. To my principal, I don't know whether he's back. We'll be back shortly. When he comes, please do recognize I'll alert you. But also CS Bag. We are partners in this. Me and Julius Mukunda, we started the CS Bag. I did the paperwork, he did the rest, and here we are still running strong. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Fred Muhumza, for that very engaging and insightful presentation. Dr. Fred Muhumza earlier spoke about the fact that he's putting on red and using red in one of the graphs should not alarm you, but I think we should be able to give him a siren so that he goes around the corridors of technocrats and they hear. He's an economic alarm bell, so to speak, because he speaks truth to power and alerts us about the so many aspects that need to be realigned. At an individual level, he also spoke about something that needs some reflection. If you're still holding a UTL number, please reflect on life. We beg you, go back, sit either in the bathroom or wherever, and look at yourself in the mirror, and then you see exactly how you need to move forward. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to recognize some delegates who are here with us. Pauline Apolot, Governance and Accountability Manager at Oxfam. Please raise your hand. Let's see where you're seated. There she is. Thank you very much for joining us. Mangeni Martin, District Planner, Namaingo. There, he's at the back. Atuhaire Innocent, District Planner, Kanungu. There you are. Abdul Sahid Ali, District Planner, Yumbe District. Where are you? Ah, there he is. He has just gone out. We also have with us Miss Erepu Sophie, the Regional Monitoring and Evaluation Officer, Education Out Loud. Oh, she's over there. Please ensure you wave so we can see you. Some of us are seated a little bit far away. Dr. Arthur Bainomujisha is here with us. He'll be speaking to us a little later. Dr. Onyinyi Bernard, Head of Department, Applied Economics at Makerere University Business School. Thank you so much. Mr. Mugoya Joseph, the Executive Director at Nyanza Fish Farmers Association. Ah, there you are. Great. I also had you, Dr. Fred Muhumuza, refer. We have a general in the house? Ah, general, please. All right. Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are honored that you accepted our invitation to be part of this very important deliberation. At around about this time, I would like to invite the representative of the Permanent Secretary and Secretary to the Treasury, Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, the Assistant Commissioner, Budget Policy, to speak to us on focusing on repurposing the national budget for economic transformation and sustainable growth. Mr. Ali Tagole, you're most welcome. Great. As he does, a round of applause.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Yes, I wish to thank our civil society partners for giving us this opportunity to reflect on the priorities in the budget for the year 26-27. As Ali introduced, my name is Tagore Ali. I'm Assistant Commissioner, Budget Policy and Evaluation at the Ministry of Finance. Apologies from the PSST. He has an engagement with the head of state, so he's unable to join us. But he handed over all what he had to say for me to deliver. The political leaders present, the executive directors, development partners, the academia, the public officers from central and local governments, the civil society organizations and private sector representatives, the media fraternity, all other invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I wish to welcome you to this pre-budget dialogue for financial 26-27. You know, in a way, you're helping us to operationalize Section 12(2) of the PFM Act. That section requires that the budget is prepared in a consultation with the key stakeholders. And so I look at this dialogue as a timely opportunity which gives our stakeholders the opportunity to validate the priorities that we presented in the budget framework paper. In fact, Dr. Muhumza, thank you very much. You know, they are hard statements, but eye-openers at the same time. You know, at times when you're in the boardroom, you look at things differently. But when you listen to an external stakeholder, you come to appreciate where the gap is. Although we are not very far from each other, only that, like you said, the resources are already locked elsewhere, so tapping them from there is not easy. So, in accordance with Section 12 of the PFM Act, this ministry has issued the second budget called circular for financial 26-27. And that circular is communicating the second resource envelope, but also provides guidance to accounting officers in the preparation of their ministerial policy statements and detailed budget estimates of revenue and expenditure for financial 26-27. As the law provides, these MDAs and local governments are required to undertake still another level of consultation, and so we shall share with them this feedback so that it informs their decisions on how to repurpose the budget to ensure that it is responsive to our economic transformation and sustainable growth agenda. The theme for this dialogue, as I alluded to, repurposing the budget for economic transformation and sustainable growth, is consistent with our fiscal consolidation agenda. In the past, we had a very big challenge that whenever we would get emerging priorities, we would have to look for additional money. So resources would be locked under a vote, and we had to look for new resources to accommodate those new priorities. It is one reason, among others, that you saw those ratios which Dr. Moms has been talking about hitting the roof. However, following the adoption of the fiscal consolidation strategy, which among others emphasizes improving allocative efficiency by repurposing resources from areas that have ceased to be priority to new priorities. Any resource to be retained by an MDA or added to that MDA has to be justified in line with the tenfold growth strategy. That is why, for those who analyzed the first budget called circular, whereas the approved budget was 72.3 trillion, that circular had 69.4 trillion. What happened? All one-offs that had attracted new money for that particular vote were plugged out. So there's nothing like this is my money. No, it was plugged out. So we communicated 69.4 trillion. And now the new resource has moved up by about 5 trillion, and those resources have been repurposed to emerging priorities. I'll give you the details later. So, how are we performing currently? If you recall, Parliament approved a budget of 72.4 trillion for financial 25-26, and among the sources of funding was domestic revenue, which contributed about 58%. Now, during the first half of the year, Uganda Revenue Authority committed to collect 18.5 trillion to finance the budget. That is from July to December. By December 31st, they were able to put on table 17.1 trillion, representing a 92% outturn. Thank you all for paying the taxes, and Uganda Revenue Authority for administering. In terms of the economic indicators, we registered a growth of 6.3 as at end of 24-25, and this is projected to be between 6.5 to 7.5 by end of this financial year. And as the result, the size of our economy is projected to also increase to 249.4 trillion Uganda shillings by June this year. Inflation has remained stable for the period November to December at 3.1%. But there's something I've picked from Dr. Muhumuza. He's saying, much as you are managing the patient in ICU, you should look at the people involved. How much are they putting in? So we shall try to examine the process and see how much BOU and the rest of the stakeholders are putting in to contain it to the 3.1. The exchange rate has also remained stable. The shilling appreciated by 2.45 in the year ending December 2025. And the researchers like Dr. Muhumuza are saying the Uganda shilling is the most stable currency in the world, followed by UK and the Hong Kong dollar. Export of goods and services reached US $13.4 billion in financial 24-25, of which 10.6 billion US dollars was earned from export of goods only. So for the year ending in November 2025, export of goods reached 12.79 billion US dollars. And Uganda registered a balance of payment surplus of US dollar 2.4 billion as at October 2025, from a deficit of US dollar 683 million a year ago. And our researchers who combed the data are saying this has been the highest BOP in the last 15 years. Foreign direct investment increased to 3.5 billion US dollars by October 2025. We are currently working on the semi-annual report, so we shall have the detailed half-year performance on our platforms that we normally use to disseminate the information to you. How is 26-27 budget? Yes, Dr. Muhumuza was giving us highlights as at BFP level. The budget for 26-27 is the second budget to implement the NDP4, but also the first to implement the NRM manifesto for 26-27 up to 30-31. As I said, at BFP level, we issued a resource of about 69. As we talk now, it has increased to 78.25 trillion, reflecting an increase of 5.87 trillion compared to the financial year 25-26. Because 25-26, we had 72.4 trillion. We are now at 78.2 trillion. But as you recall, at BFP level, we had issued that 69, purposely not to lock that money to priorities that have ceased to be. So, what are the details within this resource? Domestic revenue. 25-26, we projected 37.2 trillion. 26-27, in the second resource that we are communicating, it has increased to 41.5 trillion, an increment of 4.3 trillion. We can clap for Uganda Revenue Authority, though there's a lot to be done. At least we are moving progressively. Because as this figure increases, it helps us to neutralize the graphs which Dr. Muhumuza has been displaying, that inverted U. As you all are aware, we are hoping to have the first oil in 26-27, and we are projecting a maiden inflow of 1.4 trillion. We pray that all interventions go on as planned. Budget support. This year, 25-26, our projection is 2.08 trillion, but we are reducing it to 1.2 trillion next financial year. You know, budget support is majorly the resources we access from the external market to support the budget. Because we have budget support, then we have project support. Budget support comes with no strings. It supports the budget in general. In other words, it helps us to address the deficit between what we plan to spend and what Uganda Revenue Authority is giving us. Then project support comes with strings attached for specific projects. So, in the spirit of our fiscal consolidation agenda, which says we should minimize borrowing to the extent possible, that is why budget support has been reduced from 2.08 trillion to 1.2 trillion. That's a reduction of 891 billion. Domestic borrowing, this year, the projection was 11.4 trillion, and 26-27, we are reducing it to 8.95 trillion, a reduction of 2.43 trillion. And like Dr. Muhumuza reflected on the graphs there, the interests are in double digit. And the implication is, when this figure moves up, you are encroaching on the domestic revenue. And so we would have less to be repurposed for financing other interventions. That's why that figure is being reduced from 11.4 trillion to 8.95 trillion, so that we manage those bottom lines of interest payment and debt servicing. Project support. This is the man I said we borrow specifically for specific projects. Our projection for 25-26 is 11.33 trillion, and it is coming down to 10.84 trillion, a reduction of 489 billion. Reason being, we are trying to the extent possible to minimize non-concessional borrowing because of the costs involved. We are trying to minimize the curvature of Dr. Muhumuza's inverted U. Debt rollover. This year, 25-26, we had a projection of 10.03 trillion. It has slightly increased to 13.96 trillion for 26-27. And we are picking the lessons from Dr. Muhumuza. We shall ensure that we use those facts to see how we can ring near these parameters. Local revenue for local governments, Dr. Muhumuza, your statistic was still in 200 something. This year, 25-26, the projection is 328.67 billion, and they have increased by 12.3 billion to 340.99 billion. But Adam and the team are chasing a target of 1 trillion. And he will share with us the experience of IRAS, because as of now, I think we are like 99% coverage, IRAS. And it has done wonders for some local governments. So that gives us now the picture of the total resource envelope and how it has moved from 25-26 to 26-27. However, like Dr. Muhumuza indicated, I have 72.249 trillion with so many folks around it. And so I start with the statutory folks. And those are folks to do with debt servicing. Number 1, external debt repayment. This year, 25-26, our obligation is 4.99 trillion. Next year, our projected obligation is 4.2 trillion, a reduction of 804 billion Uganda shillings. Domestic refinancing, that one I've already alluded to it. It gets off the plate. So that one takes the 13.96 trillion. So it's not available for us to use. Domestic areas. Domestic areas, currently, the figure has been maintained to the 200 threshold. But before May, you remember we committed to clear domestic areas within 3 financial years with a commitment of 1.4 trillion per year. So by the time we have the budget approved, this figure shall have changed. But Auditor General is doing for us some verification, and we expect him to give us a report. I talked about interest payment. This year we are having an liability of 11.33 trillion, and next year, 26-27, it is increasing to 13.899 trillion. Bank of Uganda. Dr. Muhumuza, you had a figure of about 9 trillion. You remember when we converted that debt to securities to a tune of about 7.7 trillion, we managed to contain this figure. So this year, what we have in the budget is 493 billion, and next year, 26-27, our projected obligation is 547 billion, which is an increment of about 54 billion. But at least we have moved from the trillion thresholds. So when we net off all of those statutory obligations, we now have 34.3 trillion that we have to use to deliver services to the citizens of Uganda. The budget was prepared under the theme full monetization of the economy through commercial agriculture, industrialization, service expansion, digital transformation, and market access. And so it is deliberately directed to key areas that lead to enhanced human capital development, productivity, jobs, and wealth creation. The budget prioritizes the ATMs and enablers, and particular attention will be put on cleaning up and enforcing execution discipline, which majorly is the source of that risk factor of supplementaries. And what I'm picking from Dr. Mhumuza's paper is saying we shouldn't just issue the supplementary, but we should have a comprehensive analysis of the cost implication so that people appreciate the impact of whatever additional things they are bringing on the table. Now, in order to sustain the momentum on implementation of the 10-40 growth strategy, in the financial 26-27, we are requiring all MDAs to evaluate and prioritize investments in terms of their contribution to the 4 parameters of performance of the economy. Parameter number 1, we are prioritizing enablers. You recall, 10 growth strategy has export targets. And so we have profiled private sector players who have the potential to add a significant volume to our export basket. And we're also profiling the constraints to their operations to full capacity. And so we are budgeting for those enablers. They normally cover the roads, the railway, the water, electricity, industrial parks, the markets, and then affordable capital. Number 2, export growth. So we should put money to interventions that have a contribution to our export basket. Number 3, the fiscal returns. And then finally, private sector growth. So in conclusion, as you recall, research findings shared with us at the 9th Economic Growth Forum indicated that our manufacturing sector was performing below capacity due to limited access to productive infrastructure and affordable capital. Therefore, the focus of this budget is aimed at de-risking the private sector. De-risking meaning we must invest in those interventions that enable the private sector to operate at their full capacity. And priority number 1, we are looking at peace and security, which is a fundamental. Then investment in the productive infrastructure, as I already did too, such as roads, rail, water, electricity, industrial parks, the markets, and then affordable capital. The only challenge we're encountering, which Dr. Mhumuza alluded to, is where an investor leaves a service park, goes to an area where there's no energy, there's no water, there are no roads, and then he says, before I put up this plant, I request that you provide A, B, C, D, E. But that is being handled at that level. Soon, we shall have all our parks being the first point of destination. Therefore, with those few words, I wish to thank all of you for listening to me and our partners for organizing this dialogue, which promotes citizens' participation and accountability in the budget process. It gives us the opportunity to challenge our budget so that by the time we submit the budget come 1st April, we shall have something that is to a great extent responsive to our critical development needs. I thank you for God and my country.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alitagole. Thank you. Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. That speech from the Permanent Secretary and Secretary to the Treasury is one that must be reassuring, isn't it, Doctor? But it's also one to fully internalize, especially for many stakeholders, with regard to the fact that the Speaker has revealed that government is profiling enablers. I do not know whether the various stakeholders are part of the team that is profiling these enablers to undertake these initiatives. I think it will be important that stakeholders like CS Park, Accord are brought on board. We have what has come to be known as tenderpreneurs who are very, very astute and ready to position themselves as enablers. If you have other stakeholders outside of government to be able to contribute to that process, I believe it will be a great idea. Ladies and gentlemen, just a reminder that Mr. Mubiru Richard, the chairman of the Economic Subcommittee and Policy at UMA, board member of MOBS Economic Forum, is also here with us. There you are. We also have in our midst Maini Fred. Maini Fred is the district planner for Adjumani. Mr. Maini, there you are. We also have Shaban Kabatsar, district planner for Budaka. I hope I got that name right, sir. Thank you very much for making time. We also have with us Dr. Adam Babare, the Commissioner Secretary, Local Government Finance Commission. My apologies if the pronunciation comes through. We are descendants of medical people in our circle where we were writing, so my apologies for that. Ladies and gentlemen, our next engagement is a panel discussion. This panel discussion is going to be exhaustive, insightful, and I'll be introducing very shortly the gentlemen who will be coming through to join me on the stage. But before that, I would like to engage Mr. Onyango. Mr. Onyango Wilberforce on the QR code that we have with us on the table. If you've been unable to scan it and decided to use the www.menti.com link, that particular link should take you to an assessment, a set of questions that have been put by the team at CS Park to help us with significant feedback later on after the deliberations and the discussions are done. So you can make sure you answer those questions and also give your views, especially where you are required to state explicitly on what you think should be done in as far as specific interventions are concerned. As that is being undertaken, I hope we shall be able to have a demonstration a little bit later for clarity purposes and to ensure that everything is smooth. I would like to now invite my panelists who will be discussing various papers. Let me just ensure that we have our profiles intact with us. Our very first one is Yusuf Serunkuma. Yusuf Serunkuma has his guns trained on studying conflict, political theory, economics, and nationalist consciousness. He's a columnist with the Observer newspaper. Some of you have read his articles in publications including the African Political Economy, as well as the Pan-African Review. He's also an author and a playwright. One of his books is The Snake Farmers, The Meat Festivals, and his most recent book is called Surrounded: Free Markets, Democracy, and Other Entrapments of New Colonialism, and it was released in 2025. He holds a PhD in social and cultural anthropology from the Martin Luther University, Halle-Wittenberg in Germany. Mr. Yusuf Serunkuma, please make your way to the stage. Thank you. Nice to see you again. Great. Very fast. Our second panelist is Robert Mbazira. Robert Mbazira is Associate Director Tax at Ernst & Young. He comes with over 14 years of experience in tax advisory, transfer pricing, compliance reviews, restructuring, tax due diligence, managing corporate, as well as employment tax matters. Mr. Mbazira is a qualified accountant and member of the SCCA. Mr. Mbazira, please, you're most welcome. Let's ensure the hand clap is emphatic to welcome our panelists. We also have Dr. Arthur Bainomjisha, the Executive Director at Advocates Coalition for Development and Environment. He's a leading public policy research think tank. ACOD rather is a leading public policy research think tank in Eastern and Southern Africa. He has lectured peace and conflict studies at Makerere University for 15 years and currently serves as a senior teaching fellow in the Department of Public Administration and Governance at Uganda Christian University, Mukono. He's also an external examiner for PhD students at Makerere University School of Law. And additionally, he has served as a civil society fellow at the International Peace Institute, a New York-based public policy think tank. He holds a PhD in peace and conflict studies and a master's degree in peace studies from the University of Bradford, as well as a diploma in national security from the Galilee Institute in Israel. You're most welcome, Dr. Arthur Bainomjisha. Our fourth and last panelist will be Mr. Paul Lokuma, a tax policy advisor at the Ministry of Finance, Planning, and Economic Development. Gentlemen, thank you for making time, and we would like to again thank the team at CS Park, led by Julius Mukunda, for getting hold of these gentlemen. It is not an easy job, especially within Kampala, that at this moment in time, you're able to put together these great minds. We are looking forward to hearing from you. Dr. Arthur Bainomjisha will be talking to us about reprioritizing public spending for inclusive and high-impact economic transformation. Mr. Mbazira Robert will be talking taxes and domestic revenue mobilization. How can the business climate unlock growth and investment? While Mr. Paul Lokuma, who will be speaking and appearing on behalf of the Permanent Secretary, he'll be talking balancing budgetary purposing, fiscal discipline, and sustainable revenue mobilization, while Mr. Yusuf Serunkuma will be aligning the political economy and the national budget for 10-fold growth. Those will be the discussion points for each of our panelists. I would like now to begin by putting the general starter question about Uganda's budget that is already large, but growth and transformation remaining slow. If you had to repurpose just 3 spending priorities in the next budget to unlock 10-fold growth, what would you cut, what would you scale up, and why? That is 1 minute to each of us, and then we shall go into the other questions. Let me begin with Mr. Serunkuma. The question is, Uganda's budget is already large, but growth and transformation remain slow. If you had to repurpose just 3 spending priorities in the next budget to unlock 10-fold growth, what would you cut, what would you scale up, and why?
Thank you so much, Igenyi. I mean, to directly respond to the questions, I mean, the budget has so many components which are being funded. And I mean, I want to speak very politically that I'll start by saying no supplementary budget. No supplementaries after the budget has been decided. No supplementaries. And no classified expenditures, right? No classifieds. I know the security component, but I'll be like, no classifieds. Because, I think that's why we get so much hemorrhage. We don't know exactly what is contained in classified. We don't know exactly. Most of these supplementaries sometimes oversee more than what was budgeted in the earlier budget vote. So I would insist on cutting those, and I would focus on the productivity, everything that is productive. And I think later, when I'm speaking about the political component of this budget, I'll be asking questions about how, because the budget has 2 arms, has expenditure and income generation. I want to interrogate the amount of time we spend on the income generation arm of the budget. You know, I think there we haven't focused so much on it because normally it's URA generating so much money. And I will ask, how about Uganda Investment Authority? And some other things, I think I'll speak about this later, but in terms of repurposing, everything that is generating agriculture, for example, infrastructure, for example, specifically coffee, you know, where income can be generated, coffee which employs over 12 million Ugandans, that needs to be, you know, humongously, more deliberately funded.
Okay.
You see, we spend so much on things such as security, state house, you know, all those budgets would have to be cut.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Mr. Robert Mbazira, what can you cut? What can you scale up?
Mine would be very simple. What would I focus on? Number one is corruption. It is not news to any of us that over 10% of our budget is lost in corruption, and that is as per the Auditor General's report. You focus on that, you already have 10% more to utilize. That is number one that I would really focus on so much. What would I try to scale up? Very simple. And Doctor did talk about it. Tax to GDP ratio. We are fighting so hard, even after having come up with a domestic revenue mobilization strategy of 1920 to 23. Focus was on expanding the tax base, but you can see that we have really struggled to increase our tax to GDP ratio. Target was 18-19%, and we are hardly at 14%. What would I do? I would go ahead and implement that domestic revenue mobilization strategy. It was very good, and one of the things that they really focused on was increase and widen the base. Has it been done? It is evident that even in last year's budget, the focus was on that. 3-year tax exemption for startups, use your NIN as a tax registration number. You can see that the focus is to bring everyone into the net. But I can assure you, most of the people are not yet there. And even those who are there, the register is already bloated. They're not actually paying taxes. So I would actually focus on that, and I would probably have more money to put into production. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Lakuma, the permanent secretary is the principal advisor, economic advisor to the government, overseeing the budget process as well as public expenditure. To ask you right now to tell us what you would cut or scale up will be preempting what is already in the budget, but nonetheless, the question is there.
Yeah, thank you, moderator. Certainly, our budget is not as big as many would think. We are still below what other comparator countries are spending. Our budget is at about less than 25% of GDP. We are spending less than what we would, what a country of our size is supposed to spend. And also spending less, given our ambition to be a 500 billion economy by the year 2040. The issue of budget cuts then wouldn't focus so much, wouldn't be much on my agenda. My agenda would be to leverage efficiency in expenditure, on the expenditure side, better service delivery, better infrastructure, develop our democracy much, not that it's bad, but put it on another tire, deliver on the goals which are articulated in the Vision 2040. If you look at the Vision 2040, all our aspirations are there, and the flagship projects are also there. So deliver better on the expenditure side. I would also scale up, like my colleague, my tax advisor at the Big Four, scale up revenue mobilization, rebalance the tax system uh, so that there's less burden and there's uniform application of the law between similar firms and similar individuals. That is something we should work on. That some sections of the society and some sections of the business community tend to bear more tax burden than others. That is to say, our tax system can be more progressive than it is right now. But also rebalance the dichotomy between local government taxes and central government taxes, where the central government taxes are more on the corporate side, more elite driven. The political veto points are elite driven, and the local governments deal with the nuisance and the painful taxes. They had to collect taxes and fees, and which annoy people. Some of them are multiple. There's double taxation. You get like in the accommodation sector, they are paying 26 different fees collected by the local government. Local governments do that because they want to be fiscally viable. It's all right. But also they are creating an extra cost and an extra burden to the private sector. So those are the things I would scale up. The reforms in the revenue mobilization front. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Doctor? You could use the microphone.
Yes,
if, uh,
thank you very much, and good morning, friends. First, I thought I would problematize
Okay.
the issues. What are the issues at hand? Try to problematize the situation. Of course, Dr. Mhumza has alluded to them, but you know, we have low agricultural productivity in spite of the fact that agriculture sector employs 80%. It's erratic, it's subsistence, it's chaotic. So we have that problem, and we must sort it out and unleash the potential of our agriculture sector. We have high youth unemployment in this country. It is staggering. Approximately 41% of Ugandan youth, totaling about 4.2 million individuals, are not even in education, in employment, or in any training. We have regional inequalities. We have regions in this country that are extremely in distress, and the development in one part of the country is pulled down by those. I'm talking about Karamoja, for example. I'm talking about, of course, northern Uganda, including West Nile. These need affirmative action. I'm talking about climate vulnerability. We are a nature-based country. We are rain-fed, we depend on rain-fed agriculture, and climate change has become real. We cannot harvest, we cannot depend on rain-fed agriculture. That is a challenge, so we're not planting and harvesting, so we must do something. But we also have a crisis in terms of debt, a debt crisis. I think it's gone through the ceiling, and we must deal with that. So what would I then propose to cut? Rationalization of agencies was a very good move by government, and it was supposed to save us about 1 trillion Ugandan shillings. It was done, but was not completed. And now I think we may not have saved anything. Yes, people moved. What was achieved is just rationalizing, moving these agencies that we are duplicating. But I think we need to take a step further now. Take a step further, because again, we may be having so many hands doing nothing. And so we must rationalize our human resource in the government, have a lean government, and equip our people, pay them very well so that they can do the job. I think a study that has been done comparing Kenya and Uganda, it shows that you need one Kenyan to do four jobs of Ugandan. You need 4 Ugandans to do what one Kenyan person can do. That's an indictment on our work culture. We must, when people get jobs, they must deliver. So that's an issue that So I'm talking about that rationalization.
That's right.
But of course, I would also reduce the size of parliament. I would reduce, but of course, we have had elections, they have come back, but they are very expensive. And Dr. Mums has told you, we buy them cars, but we fuel the cars, and those cars are theirs. So I think, yes, we still have over 500 members of parliament. It's so huge, they decide their own pay, and they don't pay taxes. I know pay very small tax, so they even don't feel the pinch that Ugandans are feeling. Perhaps I would actually say members of parliament pay the tax, so that when you are legislating, you actually know what you are legislating about. Pay taxes so that we can get money, but also they must fuel their cars. So I think there's something we can do around that, Dr. Mhumza. But the other issue, of course, has to do with the debt. The debt, perhaps I would really reduce the appetite. My advice to government is to reduce appetite for borrowing. There are non-functional actually loans there that were contracted, and we have not implemented those projects, but the country continues to service those debt, those loans we are paying, and yet they are stagnant. They are there. So my brother here, that's an area to look at and deal with that, because the debt. I come also from a Christian tradition that a borrower is a slave to the lender. I would want to be debt free. I would want to have financial freedom. We must cut the chains of borrowing. Yeah. So.
All right.
Yeah, so that's an area that we can actually stop that, but also deal with those non-functional performing loans and review them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bainom Gisha. Let's toss that question direct to Mr. Paul Okuma, the tax policy advisor at the Ministry of Finance. Government is under intense pressure to spend more, service debt, while stimulating growth. What are the real fiscal trade-offs that are possible to do? What can you slow down on in order to create space for transformation?
You can borrow from me.
This is working. Yeah. Thank you. Given my office, my work is to mobilize more resources. So I'll think about how to mobilize more domestic resources so that we can improve on the mix, on the financing mix we have. Debt is here with us. Debt is part of government financing. And it is here with us forever. We are always going to borrow, even though others says someone who borrows is a slave. But debt should be part of government financing mix. Yeah, unless you have a lot of large resource deposit or reserve, like Saudi Arabia maybe, or Venezuela, where you have a large hydrocarbon deposit and you are producing what Mumuza was saying, 1 million barrels a day, then you can think of maybe eliminating debt. But debt should be part of our financing mix. But what quantum is the issue? Maybe we in the future we should reduce the quantum of debt by increasing other alternative financing modes. There are emerging financing mixes which are coming up, the green financing, the blended financing. But most importantly, and the biggest part of our financing mix, even currently, is tax. How would we make sure that tax works for us going forward? Because also we are peaking. We need to look at the tax system from the structure of the tax itself, the structure where we have more national taxes than local government taxes, yet local governments are the client-facing agencies, and they tend to be better. They tend to have better political legitimacy with the people, and they tend to provide services like drainage services, collecting garbage. So they have a better platform for accountability. of government financing. Yet the own source revenue and the intergovernmental fiscal transfers are small. The portion going to local governments are small. Yet, as I said earlier, local governments are the client-facing agency, and they also provide the local governments the services which have been labeled as services to be delivered by the local government, which include education and to some extent primary health care. Those are services which the citizens interact with, and they can build political legitimacy and make citizens pay more taxes. The tax structure is also dominated by consumption taxes. We need to rebalance that going forward by moving moving from indirect taxes to more direct taxes. So that will require making the investment environment very good to attract more investments. And that may require lowering taxes to attract those investments, but then that will transfer the burden of tax collection to salaries and pay as you earn. The other thing we have to deal with is issues in tax administration, particularly the leveraging and the harnessing of technology. We have also to deal with our tax policy, make sure it's more predictable. It doesn't change so often, because that affects the investment environment, but also a tax policy which is fair, redistributive, but also progressive, where those who have more pay more, and those who have less pay less. But also a tax policy which increases the base, as was discussed earlier, so that everybody pays their own share. We have also to deal, and most importantly, to deal with political economy issues in the tax system. That includes regulation. Ugandan politicians don't like talking about taxes. You can be somewhere in a forum. They all know we need revenue. They don't talk about, they don't mention taxes. I don't know where they think the revenue will come from. When they don't give taxes that legitimacy, that public forum, they are shy to talk about it. They want to be seen on the expenditure side. So we have to deal with that also, but also fair treatment, like I mentioned earlier, balanced, where horizontally balancing the taxation, where similar firms, similar individuals, having similar jobs should not pay different taxes, and should not have a platform where they can negotiate for exemption or for special treatment. So those are the issues we have to deal with to raise more revenue. But most importantly, we have to work on the regulatory framework that will help us reduce informality, but also have higher order in the markets, so that informal firms do not give competition to the formal firms who are obedient and have fidelity to the tax system. We have to rebalance that going forward so that we can collect more revenue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll be returning to you later on how the reprioritization is done and what particular evidence goes into guiding the sectors that you think can be able to help the ministry or the government, for that matter, do achieve that. You spoke about the politicians, Yusuf Serunkuma, aligning the political economy. I think that is something very, very fundamental. I don't know whether it's a mindset issue. I don't know whether it's a systemically chronic social disequilibrium that we are dealing with. He speaks about the fact that we cannot do away with debt. So we're going to have to find ways of living with what is no doubt a very uncomfortable monster. But you know the politicians very well. Are they in any way ready to do the alignment?
Thank you, Igenyi. I just want to begin by returning to the question you asked us at the very beginning. You asked us to outline the things where cuts should be made and
That's
where
right.
scaling up should be done. Now, the problem with that question is that it assumes that the problem with our budget is a technical problem. But the people who are there don't know where to cut, where to increase. Is what I mean. Our problem with our budget has never been technical. The people there really know what has to be done. They know where money should be put, where money should be put. But the problem is that our budget is a political tool. We have a political budget, which when we have these conversations, we tend to depoliticize these conversations. It's not a technical challenge. It's a political question. And that takes me to a mindset thing that you asked me. And I want to begin by, there's a comment, there's a joke I think you made earlier in your talk about holding a UTL line. You know, you said something like, if you
No,
hold
I didn't mean that. I was
hey, let's take the joke. He said something like, you know, if you hold a UTL line, look at yourself in the mirror
and reflect on
and reflect. I think he meant to say you're ancient. You know, you belong to the Stone Age period. And that joke hit me hard because, you know, if you hold a UTL line, you should be proud of it. Because if UTL makes profit, that's money to government of Uganda.
Yeah.
So we're basically generating money. So if you don't hold a UTL line, be guilty. Feel bad about it that you have succumbed to foreign exploitation. Airtel, MTN are not ours. When they make money, and they make lots of money, they take that money out of this country. So it should be in our patriotic interest, in our nationalist interest, to actually hold UTL lines.
Yeah.
We should hold UTL lines. And that's takes me to the thing about income generation. How many of you here know that Meta Group is owned by the government of Uganda?
Which group?
Meta Group.
Meta Group.
Yeah. About 5 companies under Meta Group. How many of you know that's a public entity owned by government of Uganda? How many of you know? That entity, the story appeared in 2007 in the New Vision. You remember when we were discussing Mavida, cutting sugarcane, cutting the forest to grow sugarcane? A New Vision did a story where in 1985, the Obote government, they was part of nationalizing these entities and giving them back. We, I think at about 53% shareholding of Meta Group is by government of Uganda. Now the problem, by 2007 when the story was done, Meta Group had never declared its books to whoever is supposed to be looking at them. This is a story, you look it up. In 2007, it's actually the lead story in the New Vision that Meta Group has kept their books hidden from public auditors because it's an entity owned by the government of Uganda, which means we have money there, we're not collecting it. And there are so many entities, if you go by that story, owned by government of Uganda, but nobody's collecting money from those things. And we spend lots of time focused on Uganda, URA. It should be a problem that the only collector of money coming into government of Uganda coffers is Uganda Revenue Authority. It should be a problem. Why is that? Yet this country, if you go back, and I think the biggest submission I wanted to make again here is that, you know, I'm not arguing that we should be communist, but governments are run as businesses. Governments collect money. Idi Amin, working with just 900 to 1 million coffee farmers, managed to run this government by money coming from coffee. Uganda Coffee Marketing Board gave Idi Amin money to run this government. Most of it. Working with 900,000 to about 1.1 million farmers. There are now 12 million farmers of coffee. But 70% of that money, 70% of those who sell our coffee are foreigners. And Dr. Mhumza eloquently noted this. 70% of those who sell our coffee are foreigners. The names sound Ugandan. You know them. Yugakov, Chagaranyi. The names sound Ugandan. But those companies are not local. So if the books say we made this amount of trillions this financial year, know that because these businesses are foreign, a huge part of that money didn't come back to Uganda. What should be profit going to the national coffers, and in that vein, instead of harassing peasants on the streets of Kampala to pay more taxes, we should be making money running this thing as a business. You see, this is why I go back to the joke about UTL. If UTL makes money, that money goes to the coffers of Uganda. And I'll give one interesting example. I don't know, I need to verify, but the last story that I read shows these contracts are still standing. Government of Uganda in 2002, this is President Museveni writing to Apollon Sibambi, asking him, Apollon Sibambi was then Prime Minister, asking him to review the monopoly contracts we signed with MTN, Celtel, and Uganda Telecom to own our airwaves. This is allegedly a free market economy, but there's the president in 2002 writes to the Prime Minister then asking him, why don't we have other players in this economy? Why don't we have other players? And I remember the minister, John Nassassa, I don't know what minister he held in, there's a story which followed up. John Nassassa came out and clarified, and he said those contracts are stable, they are not going to be terminated, they are still running, they're still active. You see, so if you look at our income generation side of our budgeting, I think we perform so badly. So if we say we're going to stop borrowing, what are we replacing this with? You see, I can go on and on giving you so many examples of things that are supposed to be generating money into the national coffers, but we've simply ignored it.
Okay.
Okay. I will leave it here for now.
Okay.
I hope I get the chance
All
to
right.
come
I'll
back.
be returning to you shortly for what should be the building the winning coalition that should be able to deliver much of the way through the many obstacles that you speak about. But Mr. Mbazira Robert, businesses are crying foul. They say the tax system is hurting investment. Practices are hurting transformation. And I know the conversation in many rooms is on how to widen the tax base as opposed to deepening. What exactly should be the magic bullet for a country like Uganda right now as we grapple with these inconsistencies?
I beg your pardon on that.
What should be the magic bullet? Businesses are crying foul, saying the tax system is hurting investment, and the practices, especially on tax collection, are also not very friendly, so much so that they basically lead to evasion of taxes. What should be the magic bullet in terms of specific taxes to be rolled out for our economy as is?
Okay, thank you. Allow me tweak the question a little bit. What we need right now are not new taxes. And I will be very sincere with you. It's actually shocking. Ladies and gentlemen, did you know that all of us who are in this room this morning, we contributed highest to the basket? It is actually shocking, and what Dr. Momuza was saying is true. Do you know that pay as you earn, contributed the highest tax, followed by domestic VAT, over 5 trillion, I think it was around 5.2 or so. It is actually shocking, which means that you have less disposable income. So what we actually need are not new taxes. And this has been said. I could probably not even say anything new, but we need to put so much emphasis on some of the measures that we have already put across. If we say widen the tax base, we should actually widen it. Do you know that, for example, just the other day I was working with a multinational. This multinational entity had a customs audit. Those are import taxes related. It had a tax investigation ongoing. A tax investigation, the liability assessed 56 billion. Customs audit, 34. Then there is a comprehensive audit, which is ongoing. A comprehensive means all the taxes under their profile. So to say domestic, they are also undergoing that audit. Look at the time they're going to spend to respond to those audit queries. Look at the time they need to spend to put evidence together to object. But most importantly, look at the time they're going to spend to engage guys in production, because there is an investigation and it's a manufacturing entity. That alone leads to taxpayer fatigue. Number two, it's automatic that I'm going to divert some capital into this. But most importantly, when you look at all those 4 ongoing cases, one of them or two is going to end up in the Tax Appeals Tribunal, where they tell you, for you to enter that door of the tribunal, first pay 30% of the tax in dispute. You're already locking up my capital as a business. So as a tax practitioner, my advice would be very simple. As government, we don't need to focus on new taxes. Let us focus on widening the base. Last year's budget was very okay. And every time I got an opportunity to speak like this, I would actually say, I commend government for the amendments that were proposed. They were very good. You could see they were focused on widening the base. But it's quite shocking that as we come close to year end, as we get into another budget, most of these that were targeting to widen the base have not yet been implemented. The regulations to have union as a team, they're not yet out. So you can see that whereas we have good ideas, the biggest problem is implementation. And the other that I could probably talk about is the URA's mindset.
Tax collector.
Yes. And I like the fact that the assistant commissioner did actually, Mr. Al, did actually appreciate the Revenue Authority for what they have done. And I also commend them for that. You can imagine out of 18 trillion that they targeted to collect in the first half, 92% was collected. Wow, that is really good. But you are leaving behind people who have bruises. You are feeding today, but will you be able to feed tomorrow? I leave that question to all of us. Where is the mindset of the Revenue Authority? Their main center is collection. And any economist in the room, I want to point you to this. Did you know that there is a very big issue in the banking sector, ladies and gentlemen? Dr. Mumuze, you have been talking about bonds and bills. Do you know that what is ongoing right now could actually worsen? Do you know what the Revenue Authority has gone for? They have gone for government securities. Sorry, I might take a little more.
It's all right. Good perspective.
Government securities, which are the bills and bonds that Doctor has been talking about, which the minister in every year's budget speaks to as domestic borrowing. Okay? Do you know that they have been suffering withholding tax as a final tax? If it is a bill, less than 10 years, 20%. A bond, more than 10 years, 10%. Less than 10 years, 20%. That is a final tax. So to say, the interest income that you, the investor in government securities, you're going to earn, you as lent to government, that interest should not be taxed again, despite the fact that as a corporate entity, tax rate should be 30%. Someone like me could probably say that the framers back then looked at it as an incentive. Okay? Do you know what the Revenue Authority is saying? And this was in the law. The law says the expenses, because the income is not going to be taxed again, please look at those expenses and you disallow them as well, which is true. Back then, before probably I started even practicing, in 2007, they sat down and said, you know what, we have issues with apportioning the overheads, leave them. But let us look at interest as the direct cost that these banks are incurring. Okay? And they came up with a formula. Fast forward, in September, the Revenue Authority comes up, withdraws that guidance of 207, and it says, I have seen an issue here. Most of you are not paying taxes. In that case, this is the recommended formula you should use going forward. Also go back and look at overheads. Actually, go back at least 5 years ago and look at how much you should have paid, more tax you should have paid. Ladies and gentlemen, not so sure whether you have actually internalized what I'm telling you, but this has a bigger impact into the economy. Just yesterday, I was trying to simulate. Do you know that that alone changes the effective tax on interest income earned from government securities, and it makes it shoot over 30%, which is the corporate tax rate? Do you know what that means? Imagine a scenario, because me as a bank institute, I'm saying, if I can lend to government, say at 15%, and this is to you, the economists in the room, or anyone who can relate with economics. Government is saying, I'm borrowing from public at 15%, okay? But now, before there was a 10% or 20% going back to government as tax. Now government is coming for an additional more than 10%, okay? What does it mean? It means that instead of again going for government, I should look at Julius, because now I would be earning way more. And we can also see a scenario where they are all withdrawing their money from government securities. Where would that leave the economy? Imagine if they all wake up one day and they say, no more investing in government securities. If government says, I need to borrow domestically, and there is no positive response to those bids, what is going to happen? Probably more focus would be on on the Revenue Authority. Importantly, and I want people to relate more.
Okay.
And this will probably be the last one, but I think there are so many things that we need to look at instead of increasing taxes. This one, do you know that most of us, we have relatives, or if not ourselves, where we would be presumptive taxpayers? Who is a presumptive taxpayer? That is considered to be a small taxpayer. Okay. Now, do you know that most of the people in town, in CBD, when you look at their revenue that they earn, for example, on a daily, a case in point, someone in Chikubu, on average, they could even make sales of, say, 4 million or 5 million, okay? That alone in a month could even be of close to 200 million. Did you know that already that person would be considered not a presumptive taxpayer? But those end up paying 500K, 1 million, because they are considered small taxpayers. Now, if we really concentrate and look at a wider space, another example, Dr. Mumuza, forgive me. Do you know that he could be having rentals, but how many of us who have rentals are actually paying taxes? That is already a leakage. But most importantly and lastly, and I commend Minister of Finance, digitalization has been done. Wow, that is good. If risk came into play, and e-tax, among others, we are now in an era of AI. How are we even using those systems to ensure that we do proper data analysis that could yield more taxes? You see someone importing every day, every month, but they tell you they're in tax losses. Where do they continue to import? You'll allow me pause it there?
All right.
And probably.
Thank you very much. I wish in your submission you had looked a little bit more at Mr. Paul Lakuma. There, I know there is a response that he has to give with regard to that, but allow me engage Dr. Arthur Bainomugisha on reprioritizing public spending for inclusive and high impact transformation. Now the question is, government's current expenditure structure, sectors or programs are most that are overfunded relative to impact, and there are those that are underfunded but of high return for growth and inclusion. That particular decision seems to be a difficult one to make for many people within the corridors of power if it is overfunded but low impact, underfunded and high impact. Talk to the technocrats, including our dear representative from the PSST.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think, of course, after going through the budget, rather the elections like this one, sometimes it is difficult to invest. Now I think it's stabilization, it is, and of course the elections are very expensive anywhere in the world. Democracy is expensive. And so you are paying debts, you are nursing the wounds of elections. But assuming other factors held constant, assuming that one doesn't exist, first we need to look at our sectors that can have high returns if invested in agriculture. Still remains a backbone. And unfortunately, agriculture has not attracted the middle class or the elites, because it could be an elite without the money. But I think the government needs to attract the elites into agriculture sector so that we go down there and actually stay there and succeed there. Because what is happening, we are saying agriculture is a backbone, but actually who's holding that sector? We are farming on phone, and things are not working because we are not fully involved. So I would invest in agriculture. Value addition is the key in the agriculture sector. I look at just simple. Look at the matoke that comes from the west, and the cows that feed the city. Can you imagine the rules of live cows all the way from Mbarara, from where to Kampala, and then you slaughter them there and you throw away their refuse to places which actually are not agriculture productive. So I would, value addition, for example, have the slaughterhouses in those places. Matoke, why do you have to carry the bunches of matoke to bring them here when you could actually peel from there, leave the peelings there, and get manure from it and put it back and package? So that's one of the areas I would spend in. The second one, of course, the agriculture. We have talked about climate change. We have to invest in raw water supply systems that are climate resilient. And the government is already doing this, but I think not very well. There's water for production, solar pumps, but not too many people know them and not many people have access to them. I think there is need for streamlining. Maybe they should include it as part of the PDM, because our farmers, small-scale farmers, need access to this water supply so that we can produce all the year around. So government needs to invest in this. And now actually solar is cheap. Solar is down there. I think he talked about what China is doing. We can invest in solar and therefore make sure that our agriculture sector is sustainable in production. I think the other area that I'd invest in is formalization of our supporting the small and medium enterprises affirmatively, so that give them that backbone and then support them to formalize so that you can tax them. Because you cannot also reap where you don't invest. So we must invest in our small and medium enterprises. And the issue here, of course, you know that we have, our capital is very expensive. But we have, I think a study that has been done shows that Ugandans are more entrepreneurial in Africa than anyone. I thought it was the Kenyans, but it's Ugandans. And so why don't we tap into the entrepreneurial spirit of Ugandans by supporting these women, market women, supporting the youth, giving them cheap capital so that they can actually establish and sustain those businesses, then follow and tax them. So I would invest in formalization. The final one is, of course, human capital development. human capital development for this country. Let me tell you, the greatest resource that any country on earth has is not the oil and gas, it's not the gold, it is not the rare earth, it is the population, it is the citizens. Because without even minerals, a country like Japan is a workshop for the world. So we need to invest seriously in human capital development, and here I'm talking about education for our people, our children, but relevant education. The curriculum that has been rolled out is good, but government has not invested matching money to roll it out to be effective. People still, our children are being taught on theory, they need to touch. So actually government should match that curriculum with financing so that children are practical. But for those that have already missed out, the dropouts, skilling. And I think the president has done well their presidential initiatives, but I think this should be mainstreamed, zoned, and we just churn out our skilled people. And you know, these ones are already there. These Katwe people, find them where they are, skill them so that they produce first-class products that we can buy. Because now, if you are building, people will tell you, especially these civil servants who have access to a lot of money, they have all imported, if they build, they're importing tiles from China, they're importing aluminum from China. When they actually measure here, there are Chinese companies here, they measure and bring everything and they put as it is. I have refused. Myself, I have to go here and buy. They don't want to buy goodwill. You ask the elite. They don't want to buy goodwill tiles that they fade away. So what am I talking about? Skill our people to produce first-class things that we appreciate and buy them. Let me, and I'm also looking at our government must invest in the education, in the universities. The universities, I was looking at let me show you the funding for our universities. Makerere University is funded to the tune of 39.6%. Only 39.6% of Makerere budget is financed. How can it perform at full capacity? Chambogo is funded at 34%. Bustema is funded at 10%. Muni University is funded at 15.65%. Soroti University at 19%. Kabare University at 24%. We need to be serious. Universities, and you know, of course, I'm talking about universities that solve our problems, like Makerere University. Equip this university to be a center of excellence, to generate actually, to be innovative, to be solving our problems, like these Chiramotos and what we need to seriously fund them. Finally, before you take me off, I wanted also to speak to about local governments.
To the
local governments,
local governments.
Financing for local governments. We have not looked at local governments as business. And you know, with the local economic development, if we supported local governments, and I'll give them even the leverage to enterprise, they will generate resources for this country. Up to now, I think the financing is at 9%. He will tell us 9%. It has been declining from 21% to 15 to 12. Now it is at 9%. So you are actually killing decentralization, which could be the engine for spurring socio-economic transformation of this country. So I'm making a case for increased financing of local governments, and my brother Adam is here. I support you that actually if we supported local governments as business, where 80% of our people live, it would be a game changer in this country. Finally, now the final one is urbanization.
All right.
Now, urbanization, I need to talk about, you know, government. I want to commend government or people who are there who actually came up with the idea of launching these urban areas. We have 10 which are operational. 15 have been approved. But they are getting the same money as when they were municipalities. But you see, urbanization is development. But you see, I'm also talking about, so equip this, finance well the urban center, the cities, but support them to plan. Plan. Yeah, because most of them, you know, Kampala, 40% of Kampala is planned. 60% is a slum. that is a disaster. So all these cities that have been approved, they need now to have a fiscal plan so that they start on that, and you will see how they will spur economic transformation for this country.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bainom Gisha. I'm glad you brought into the spotlight Mr. Adam Babare, the Commission Secretary, Local Government Finance Commission. I would like to move the microphone swiftly to you to respond, especially on the aspects that Dr. Bainom Gisha has just submitted on. That should be able to give us an idea of what kind of framework can be adopted in the urbanization agenda. Please.
Yeah, thank you very much, the moderator. I'm Adam Babale, the Secretary, Local Government Finance Commission. The commission, which is tasked with supporting government of this country on all matters of financing local governments. We do regular interface or dialogue with Minister of Finance and occasionally also with His Excellency about this matter. And around mid last decade, we realized that the demands on the center, what the people want from the center, or what the center wants to put in place to facilitate improvement of productivity and production in the country, was consuming the budgets year in, year out, and growing. Of course, in addition to the other expenses which puts in place a good environment. So they asked us, we agreed that we get all the support from the Ministry of Finance to support local governments, mobilize local revenues. So we had done that, but we still had a lot of hurdles. The increases were very small. So now, to cut the matter short, there is a lot which can be done to collect revenues by local governments. And we are now focusing on the following. One, the potential is there. So we are leveraging on technology. We have put in place a system which automates the administration and management of local revenues collection from identification of a source, which is by law, up to the end when the revenues hit the consolidated fund. And that system is called the Integrated Revenue Administration System, and it is the one which is giving us very good results. But of course, there are policy issues. And this is where recently we had a debate beyond automation, what next? Widening the base, the current laws are very diverse and they provide the basis. And for now, we may not be looking at new areas, but operationalizing what is there. So we still see, or we have a target, as Dr. Mumza said, to support local governments collect 1 trillion Uganda shillings, probably by the end of next financial year. And we have supported the local governments to do property valuation, e-property valuation. The potential in property, especially in the urbanities, is very high. And we want, where we have done it, we want this to be uploaded on the e-system. Where we are getting a challenge is our colleagues in the local governments who are moving at a very slow pace. Because if you have done the evaluation, uploaded the role on the system, then the system can generate demand notes and you follow up. That one alone, in fact, all of the cities, the municipalities, the town councils, they can generate us about 400 billions of our 1 trillion target. We also have another area where we are putting a lot of emphasis. Ever since government made some changes in the management of park user fees, taxis, buses, lorries. For now, it is only KCCA which is collecting. We know there is money being collected, but no city, no municipality, no town is collecting this because the current arrangement is the revenues will be collected, or the fees will be collected by URA. But the local governments don't want to read the other part of the law that the enforcement or the registration and enforcement is by local governments. So they said, this is a URA business. So, but we know people are there in the parks collecting money and eating it. So now we are in the process of engaging policymakers to have this park user fees removed from URA to come back to local governments. We can collect about 100 billion across all parks and in the municipalities and town councils. We also have a very good potential where we have government has borrowed the money, which we are paying back, to develop markets. We have very good market structures. And from these market structures, people are now saying we are overcharging them, government gave them to get out of poverty and so on. But we have now a new Markets Act, which has, before that, people exploiting these, the vendors. We who are in the government, in the local governments, would go and get 10 lockups at 50,000, then rent them out to vendors at 200,000. And vendors will say the government is overcharging them. Now the new law says there is no, we don't need landlords in markets. So it is the, and if you're a government worker, you are not supposed to have a lockup or a space in the market. And this is now still being abused by local governments. They still own some of these things or these places. So we want also to upload, we want to register all the vendors and upload those vendors on the IRAS so that these vendors pay directly to the local government. We don't need even people in the middle. The other one is the borders. I think everywhere you pass, you see borders. Wherever you go, you see borders. This is one category which, if we are talking about widening the base, we need to touch these ones. Huh? Some saying, yeah?
As an investor saying.
From the local government perspective, we want to regulate, we want to create order. We want to give you stages. Yes. And we want you to pay parking fees on your stage. We have made a calculation. We can collect about 300 billion a year from this industry.
Okay. Wrap it up.
Yes,
Mr.
I'm going to wrap up. The other area is the commercial farmers. Commercial farmers, now there is, you know, when you talk about borders, commercial farmers, politics comes in. But then, they are the ones who want the services. So I say, please contribute. All other people are paying. And some of these farmers are properly organized. We have the dairy farmers, we have the matoke farmers, sugarcane farmers, tea farmers, soybean farmers. Some of them are properly organized. We can contribute to our own services. Last one, which we are trying to handle, is professionalizing this, the administration and the management of local revenues. the planners are here, you'll bear with me, that unlike the cadres who are recruited at URA and trained and so on, who are recruited for that job, in our districts, in our municipalities, the advertisement may read, we want an accountant. Now when an accountant comes, they say, now you'll be in charge of revenue collection. This gentleman or woman has never interfaced, has been in. So they say, now go in the field, we want money. So we are saying, if we want money to create efficiency, we need to professionalize this function and have dedicated people to be trained and skilled in revenue administration. We shall have done a lot and shall be up there and moving. So
Okay.
on the part of the central government transfers, that is a daily business, but the walls are very hard because of what the center has committed to do to provide for an enabling environment. We need tarmac roads, we need water, we need electricity, we need internet, we need so many things. All these governments say these projects have taken all the money. So
All right.
we are
Thank
looking
you.
at local governments. Please, let's raise our money and we use it ourselves. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Adam Babari, the Commission Secretary, Local Government Finance Commission, on that submission. It also has a lot of appeals, you know. Many times when you hear the men who are supposed to reassure you also making appeals, you wonder who and exactly where you should go. But thank you very much. I don't know whether I heard you right. You spoke about 100 billion being collected in tax fees around the parks within the municipalities. You said 100. Is that on a weekly or monthly? Annual. All right. Even if it's annual, 100 billion that is not going anywhere but to individual pockets. That is alarming. Ladies and gentlemen, we shall be going into our plenary session very shortly. That will allow most of us within the audience to also contribute or ask specific questions to our panelists, or also share some perspective on the discussion and deliberations. But let me see off my panelists by asking each one final question. Yusuf Serunkuma, the precurrent speaker, has expressed dismay and discomfort at the fact that some of the interventions that can be undertaken often find themselves in the pitfalls of the politics of the day, including commercialization, going for borders, and so forth. So the question to you is this: how can reformers build winning coalitions for tough budget choices like cutting low-impact spending or reforming subsidies without triggering political backlash?
Thank you very much. When Dr. Mhumza was speaking, quite often he returned to the example of China.
China.
Yeah. And one thing he didn't say is that China is a communist republic, you know. So, which means China does run a government as a business. China does things. One thing that listening to the Commissioner Adam speak, I mean, I was conflicted, you know, especially in that part of borders. Like this is a government of tax collectors and borrowers. Like you specialize in collecting and borrowing, and that's finished. You don't have a plan to actually generate money through doing things. Because borders are not a solution to our transport problem. They're not. If you go to Tanzania, the Mwendokasi buses, owned by Dar es Salaam Municipal Council, those buses, started by the World Bank, every hour move 400,000 Tanzanians across the city. And they pay. And they pay money which goes into the city council coffers. So if you look at Dar es Salaam raising money, it's not just looking at tax collection.
it's actually put in place a business which decongests the city, makes transport easier, as well as gives money to the city council. Now, ours, all we think about is how do we ensure we collect much and much more, and then how do we borrow? How do you run a government by just collecting taxes? When you're given this country called Uganda, which is so beautiful that you can do so much business in it. So tying in with Dr. Muhumuza, who spoke eloquently about China, I often return to the example of China. China single-handedly across the globe has lifted people out of poverty to the point that even World Bank has had to adjust its measures of poverty to cater for China. China is a country where the government is involved in managing and exploiting the country. When the Chinese are here, when they come to Uganda, many of them come under the auspices of their government. Many of them come under the auspices of their government. There's a thing that I don't know if it has been developed quite sufficiently. The thing about capital, I think you spoke about it. I've often wanted to speak to either people from Bank of Uganda or from Ministry of Finance. There's a bank which was recently closed called Mercantile Bank. Mercantile Bank was closed, and NTV did a story of a carpenter, an Uber driver, a school investor. These are Ugandans, entrepreneur Ugandans. One borrowed money and bought a car, I think to run an Uber or taxi business. The other borrowed money to invest in a school. The other borrowed money to buy a machine for his carpentry business. They borrowed this money at an interest rate of 40%. At an interest rate of 40%. Now, you economists and people from finance, you tell me, which business in the world have you ever heard of which sustains itself in an environment where interest rate is at 40%? Where? But right. you preside over a bank, which I'm told Bank of Uganda invests things like, is the banking facility clean? Are you opening on time? Well, those are real things, but think about the banking environment. One of the things that bothers me is that government of Uganda became a credit facility instead of that it is giving money through PDM, Myoga. So it is competing with banks as a credit facility. So if by chance you give me 1 million Uganda shillings, and by chance my business grows to 50 million, do I come back to Bank of Uganda and to government of Uganda and say, Myoga, now my business has grown to 50 million, can you give me 100? Once a business grows, you have to go to the bank. But every time you approach a bank, it is between 15 and 40. And the money lenders are worse. And there, we're talking about collecting taxes. The environment. Dr. Muhumuza, I think it's about that time that we start talking about running this government as a business and collecting money through doing actual things besides simply collecting taxes.
All right. Thank you very much. Before I go to Mr. Mbazira for that final remark, I would like to recognize Dr. Ronette Atukunda, the Dean of Faculty of Economics and Energy at MOOBS. She's also a board member of the MOOBS Economic Forum. Thank you for honoring our invitation, Madam. Mr. Mbazira, we need 3 realistic reforms in our tax system that can trigger the transformation we are looking for without choking the private sector.
Number 1, let us just make use of their digital systems.
Make use of the digital system.
Yeah, do data analysis. Okay. You can actually get much more. That way you will not choke the private sector or the economy. Number 2, and this I've said it all through, it's actually now a song. Please implement the domestic revenue mobilization strategy. Simple. Implementation. Implement. Thirdly, whereas the economists will tell you that when you pay taxes, don't expect anything in return as you pay, right? But please note, service delivery is also going to move people to pay taxes. Service delivery, and that is in combination with sensitization. I know the Revenue Authority has actually tried. You see in the newspapers, but I believe people need more reasons as to why they should be paying taxes.
Okay.
When they get it right, we could probably see the results.
All right, thank you very much.
And maybe importantly,
Uh-huh.
we need to revisit and probably review those tax exemptions. Government loses over 1.6 trillion, that's if I've gotten it right, in tax exemptions. But is there anything that is commensurate? Are we getting anything in return?
Okay.
What are the benefits? We need to do that cost-benefit analysis and probably review those exemptions. Don't take them away, but you need to review them.
Good. Dr. Mhumza has already escalated that issue, especially when it comes to the profiling of enablers. We hope that key actors will engage very, very aggressively on that issue. Mr. Paul Lokoma, we can realistically achieve most of the goals, especially with regard to our budget strategy. But there are people out here and there who seem to think that the Ministry of Finance and the government, for that matter, does not have a red line. What is the red line? What won't you cross that will worsen the debt crisis?
Yeah. First of all, before that, I just wanted to say that when it comes to just to respond to some of the issues which have been raised here, it would be bad if I left without responding. My bosses would ask me, "What were you doing there?" They'll ask me, "Why didn't you defend us?" So let me earn my pay.
All right.
One is the issue, the rental issue raised by my tax colleague. Yes, and we are handling reforms there. The issue of the change in the financial sector, where the URA is asking for money 5 years back, I think that issue is being handled by URA and Uganda Bankers Association, and they have come to an amicable conclusion to the matter. And it was realized that what URA is claiming is the fair way to go. It's just a clarification of the law. In terms of government securities and taxation on government securities, I don't think that is a tax issue because these securities are oversubscribed. People buy securities. When government float them, people oversubscribe and buy them. So I don't think any inefficiency caused in the government security market is an issue of tax. It's not really an issue of tax. Even if you put the tax at 20 and the government tomorrow has a paper, people will buy. Why? Because government of Uganda has never defaulted on those papers. And then again, it's the highest paying instrument in the market. Try doing a business and see whether you get 18%. You will not. Yeah, so that's why people will still will still buy the paper because it has a sure return of 18%, and that tax is a small price to pay. But of course, there's other impacts of that on the market because now we are we call it financialization. Yeah, we are financializing the market. We are like in a casino, like there's no real product being produced out of the trading financial instruments. It's like the American bond market and the American security market. There's no really...
Basically, you're playing around with money.
Yeah, you're just playing with money. And there's no real economic value. There's no factory being produced out there. Yeah, so that's the problem. The those kind of instruments produced in the market. But in terms of tax being an impediment, no, it's not. It's not. Even if you raised it to 50%, people will still buy those papers. And Mumuza will agree with me. Yeah. The issue of China, we need to be careful how and the government has been in business before. It's not like government of Uganda has not owned business. Government Uganda used to own Uganda Airlines, used to own food and beverages, used to own Uganda Railways, which is still there, used to own OTC buses. Government has been in business and failed before, and we need to understand why it failed. China is a different culture, and how they work as a group, and how they think, the sense of patriotism. I'm not saying Africans are condemned to mediocrity, but we have another different of capitalism, another different type of capitalism, and we may not be able to replicate exactly what has happened in China. And we need to be careful when we make those comparisons, because we are different cultures. I'm not saying governments of African governments cannot succeed in doing business, running a bus, making beds in hotels. Government used to own, up to now, we own Sheraton. We give it up to a private company. There are reasons why we did that, because we were inefficient in making beds and making tea for people. So there's, for me, government pulling out of business makes a lot of sense, given that we are not from that culture. Yeah, the Asian people are a little bit different.
All right.
But we could develop that culture. Then the question you have asked me, I'll give it to my boss, Mr. Ali, to respond. The red line. Do we have a red line in the budget? Because you're more of a budget person.
Yeah, thank you. Our red lines are normally to do with debt and then supplementary. Yes. So for debt, as per our framework, we are supposed to ensure that we are always below 50%. And that is what we are referring to as debt GDP ratio. So the moment we cross that line, it means that a bigger percentage of the revenue that we are collecting will be eaten up by debt servicing costs. So that is the threshold that we have to monitor. And even if we jump above that line by a small margin, the major objective is to ensure that we roll back to below that line. Now, supplementary, we also set that line at 3% to the extent possible. But there are instances, of course, where we go above. Only that we agreed, if we are to go above the 3, which is also provided for in the law, it must be going to things that meet, number 1, the requirements prescribed in the law, that is unforeseeable, you can't be accommodated within the resources that are already in place, but also they have high impact on the transformation of the economy. So ideally, we try to the extent possible to fit it within the 3%. So majorly, those are the parameters that we track to ensure we are within those targets. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Our very last question, and one that should wrap up this panel, is to Dr. Arthur Bainomijisha. If you were 103.5 trillion Uganda shillings right now to repurpose the budget and allocate, what would you do?
Thank you very much, moderator. You know, the problem is now when we focus on the budget per se, then we plan short term and doesn't help us. But I focus on that.
Contextualize it.
Yes, I wanted to just talk about one, that to appreciate the reforms, what is going on, to appreciate what is going on in the Ministry of Finance. The achievements that the Ugandan shilling has been stable, they voted the best currency for now, how many years? 6 years, is a fundamental achievement. I also saw yesterday, but one, that Uganda has agreed with the EU to export 4,000 tons of fish. Of course, the 4,000 tons is still small, but I think for me that the right direction. But what I'm talking about, what is not coming out, my brother, even in the tenfold growth strategy, is regional market, investing in the regional market, because Uganda is too small. You know, this is a small country, yes, productive, and we are not talking about marketing. Even this PDM, we are about to see the benefits of PDM. Products are coming out, but we have not focused on the marketing. So our products will be rotting. And so I would want to focus, especially investing in the regional market. Our budget even should be speaking to. That's why we are reading the budgets at the same time as East Africans, but the budgets are not speaking to the regional market. When PDA products come out, where are we going to put them? That is very, very critical for me, because we must be able to buy, to save the produce of our farmers. To the extent that I propose that if the markets are not there, government should be able to buy farmers produce and stabilize the markets. I'm told, like the school feeding program, milk. You know, I talked about human capital development. Our children are growing up stunted. They are not eating very well. We are not investing in our children when they are young. You see them, they can't calculate small mathematical problems, they can't solve them, because we have not invested in their eating. This school feeding program, where the children can eat well and grow up as as our assets, then government should be able to buy milk, to buy all this and feed our children. The other one is access to affordable capital. I think we need to invest in that. I don't know how, but my brother there knows. But we must make our capital, we must do. I know that Uganda Development Bank, which is not accessible to most small and medium enterprises, is 10%, 10 or 12%, but that's still expensive, but it's not. So access to affordable capital is going actually to unlock the potential of our people. The industrial parks, I mean, we are talking of industrialization, but the thing has not been done well. You realize we can talk about Namanve. I think now we can talk about Mbari, but I've been to other places, there are no industries. We must industrialize, for God's sake. And finally, I also was reading this morning, Ethiopia is investing in technological revolution, especially digitization and artificial intelligence, and not only for Ethiopia, but for Africa. I think that is an area that government, and we cannot stop what is going on. This is a revolution, digitization, and therefore we must jump on this revolution and perhaps take leadership in the region. So I think we need to invest in building an infrastructure. Apparently, our children are so intelligent. You have seen the young people, how they play around with the computers, with these phones. That's a potential that we can tap into. But let us build an infrastructure for digitization. Let's invest in artificial intelligence, not buying it from Elon Musk expensively. Let us support our universities. And this must be generated from Makerere University, from Guru University, from Barara Science. Just like 4 universities invest so much in them so that they can be part of the revolution. We develop our own technology. For me, sometimes I have asked God, are we the children of Cain? For some of you who know the Bible. What is, you have been in places like this one, and the projector breaks down, and we are all looking for a white person to come and fix it. And actually, they come and they are masquerading. They come and touch a button, and the thing works. So we think that they are more intelligent. They are not. We need to get over that one. So I am saying Africa can even chart its own technological what? Path. And so to do that, we must deliberately set aside money and invest in technology, but of course in our centers of excellences in the university. But that's a long term. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Arthur Bainomichisha. Today, we've given you the stage. I think next time we shall have to work on a pulpit and ensure that the audience is bigger so that that appeal comes through. I also do hope that the AI revolution you talk about, we have a tendency of appointing boards for technology where somebody wants to know how to navigate through computer systems. No, we want whoever is on that board to be very conversant with coding so that we begin to move very, very quickly. I know of a gentleman who asked to be helped to set up an email after he was given a gig by the Ministry of ICT. And I was like, Mamma mia, what are we going to do now? All right, audience, you're ready with some submissions. I'm going to pray that your submissions are very brief and to the point. I mean that because we don't have time in order for us to achieve our strategic goals for this deliberation. I'm reliably informed that Mr. Mbiru Richard, the chairman of the Economics Subcommittee and Policy at UMA, who is also a board member at the MOBS Economic Forum, is still with us. I would love that you submit very quickly on some of the issues that the panelists have spoken about, especially from your point of view as a member of Uganda Manufacturers Association. Very quickly, we have a microphone with you there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, moderator. And kudos to CSBAG for this arrangement. We thank you for the opportunity. I have a couple of things, and I will begin with really showing gratitude to the government of Uganda for what has so far happened in terms of putting together macroeconomic stability for a number of years that has seen us reach where we have. I want to resist the temptation of Ugandans lamenting all the time. Countries that have transformed believe in their capacity to transform. I want to begin from that mindset. We can say whatever we want to say about Uganda, but we can only have one country called Uganda being ours. I needed to say that before I delve into proposing what I think can assist government in really realizing the tenfold growth agenda. Number one is the issue of mainstreaming PPPs, public-private partnerships, as a financing for public goods. In Uganda, we have lost it when it comes to this. I can dare tell you that in errands that I do in this region and sub-Saharan Africa, many countries that are not even at the level of Uganda have mainstreamed this to answer the missing links when it comes to infrastructure and the rest of them. The conversation in Uganda still has a problem. When you look at projects that are coming in as PPPs, the way they are managed is so politically tainted, and we're losing it. You can talk about Uganda Airlines and many others. But again, I don't lose focus on the fact that we have a functional one in terms of the expressway to Entebbe. It remains one of the most well-managed roads in this country. And it speaks to the fact that if we mainstream the PPPs across the tail line of infrastructure development, we can get it actually right than government having to borrow all the time we talk about infrastructure development. That's one. The second is in the realm of power generation. I chair the committee that establishes your tariffs on a quarterly in this country. And I can tell you that the demand growth month on month is pointing to 40 megawatts of power as new demand month on month. What this communicates is that before the end of the 5-year period for NDP4, we'll be running short of power. As a matter of fact, what it speaks to is the need to fast-track renewable, independent power plants development in Uganda. You don't need to actually run anywhere else. The private sector has the money to fund this, and especially jumping onto, of course, the Chinese success story, as Dr. Muhumuza has already said it. The problem we have for now is that approval of power purchase agreements is still again suffering the usual Ugandan problem of being tainted with a lot of interferences and so on beyond economics. For me, we did that, we have it right. The third.
Very quickly.
The third, yes, I come from Wuma, so I have many. That is on a lighter note. Yes, because we make a major contribution to the economy. The third is to do with capital mobilization for investment. We have beautiful things in terms of tenfold growth, and I can tell you it is something we can realize. But the alignment on sourcing of financing, I'll mention two things. We have social security savings in this country, which has since become a mountain. When I last checked, we have in excess of 20 trillion now. Accessing and repurposing this money for investment in strategic sectors is something we have been shying away from. I can tell you, if you went to Norway, you will find no fund. You go to South Africa, you find social security money. You cannot transform manufacturing when we are still borrowing. At 97% of our loan book is still commercial bank driven. The Chinas of this world have the reverse. So we need to tweak the management of social security savings in this country so that they can actually spark growth within productive sectors. The other that goes with money is, of course, reforms at the Uganda Securities Exchange. The great bulk of our businesses in this country are family-owned businesses. I can dare tell you, the pressure you are seeing on land is because of absence of alternatives for investment. The pressure you are seeing, evictions and violent crackdowns and so on, is because we don't have products where people can put their money. The message we have is that companies that started as private manufacturing entities are looking for Ugandan investors in these companies. I can confirm this because I sit on the board of WUMA. But the law has not yet been as supportive. I'm glad that Mr. Ambazira is here. We do a lot of work with them. We need to tweak the regime around regulation on security exchange to really look into opening up opportunities for investment at that level. Oh. Because then you run away from looking for money from UDBs and so on. The last one that I must mention is in the health sector. We have been shying away from speaking to health insurance, and mandatory for that matter. I do work elsewhere, and I'll mention Rwanda to begin with. And I can tell you that for something as low as 60,000 Uganda shillings equivalent as a contribution, you are able to actually guarantee health cover for ordinary employees across the year. As long as we don't discuss these things and we leave them to the politicians, who have lost it. Our money goes to health, and the very, very last one will be education sector regulation. We're talking about the 3 million for Budo and so on. Do you know why it happens? It's because there is no regulation. The Education Act, as I know it, empowers the Minister for Education to regulate items that feed into the sector. You don't regulate them, you'll continue paying 5 million, you continue paying 3 million in government-aided schools. I could go on and on.
No doubt.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that submission. Great. Very critical points there. Investment. I've always thought about the ability to look at an organization or a company doing pretty well and be able to buy into that particular company. And I'm glad the call for regulation has been made. Mr. Julius Mukunda, earlier I saw you celebrate the fact that some of the recommendations that you have suggested have been adopted. We are going to urge you to hit the foot on the gas a little bit more aggressively so that the politicians that Mr. Mubiru is so afraid of that might not actually take on those recommendations do the same. Where are my stewards? I would like to speak to a lady before I face accusations of gender imbalance. I know it always comes up. Ladies, please, as you're thinking about it, there is a gentleman here, the general. You tell us a little bit more in 30 seconds about that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
The panel discussants and the previous speaker. Actually, my concern is about this part, especially when we're talking what should we do to improve our economy. Now, I think the immediate question could have been about the HR. The best thing you can do for any nation is develop their what? HR potential. But then there's a question there also. She raised a very good example at the beginning, Madam Irene, that our education spend is below if you consider the region. But then you find that despite being below, many people come to Uganda. So I don't understand that dichotomy. We need to improve on that. But what I can see is also the question we need to look at incentives. Actually, none of you talked about that. But Dr. Mohammed also approached it. Uganda, we depend so much on agriculture, as we said. But then you find that incentives haven't been actually employed so much there. Actually, if PST was here, Dr. Gobi, he has ever talked about it. And this is a question which was raised by some of our students in Kabamba. They're taking a degree course there in military studies. But I said that we have talked so much. What can we do to improve production? That has been a question. Yes. So me, I think we need to look at incentive. They have done a lot in tourism, and I remember Dr. Moves discussed about that, in also investment. So something should be done in agriculture to improve what? I mean, to introduce what?
All right.
Incentive. Then finally, the issue Dr. Mbazlai talked about, there's that AI expectation, the dream, I liked it. But this is what we're saying. What makes China different from us is not so much on AI, but it's about the ethical and moral difference. They have that Confucianism and whatever. We need to look at the spiritual background, serious, if you are going to go beyond what we expect from technology. Thank you so much.
All right, there's a gentleman next to you. Please make it brief.
Thank you, moderator. I'll be quick. I'm called Bernard Onyinyi from MOBS. I'm riding on general submission and the Dr. Baino submission in agriculture, especially agri-industrialization, as a strategy in 10-fold growth development agenda. We have made a very big mistake that will take us long to recover. By the way, agriculture is a low-hanging fruit, but it has been not addressed well. Giving people irrigation schemes at a co-funding scheme does not work at all. We are addressing a symptom, not the disease. The only thing we can do is to restore weather patterns. And it's very simple, restore wetlands. Otherwise, putting an irrigation scheme is not sustainable. It's very expensive, first of all, moderator. I bought 2 acres of land to do tomatoes in the east. I come from Busia, because tomatoes were coming from Kenya. But now, to irrigate those 2 acres of land was going to cost me 23 million. I would pay 5, and then government pays 18. And I just said, just leave it, because it was going to kill me. You can imagine the 2 acres costed me 5 million, but irrigating it, 23 million. Doesn't make any value. So what we can do is to restore land and those wetlands and we have our natural rain, and then we shall be there.
All right.
Number two,
Ah.
a short one.
Quickly.
We should develop a theme for this agenda. You remember early 2000 when the gender question was very high. There was gender responsive budgeting, and it worked, it has worked. Let us develop a theme for tenfold growth and responsive budgeting for line ministries and agencies, and then it can work slowly. But the most important thing is what Fred said, let us do resource mobilization, and then we can repurpose. Because we have no resources, but through agriculture. Lastly, I can't keep quiet about this. What has annoyed me most are these MPs. They are the highest paid civil servants.
The
MPs. Highest paid civil servants, you buy them a free car, you buy them free fuel. Very soon they will ask for TPs and Pampers. It annoys me a lot. Thank you.
That was brutal. There's a lady behind you. Sure. Quickly.
Thank you very much. My name is Betty from Caritas Uganda. Yes, we are here thinking of how to repurpose the budget. And many speakers have talked of agriculture as being one of that bullet that can help us to propel this country to where we want it to be. However, agriculture is being given a lip service. And like he was saying, we need irrigation, yes. But this country is still depending on the hand hoe, which needs to go to the museum by now in the 21st century. Of recent, I was with some stakeholders from the Ministry of Agriculture, and we brought this issue. But they said the challenge is we have a lot of tractors, and we have even budgeted for many of them, but we don't know whom to give them to. Is that the biggest problem we have? Can we try to lift the farmer from the handy hoe, scratching the ground, year in, year out, to at least mechanizing agriculture? We have a mechanization policy in this country which has never seen the light of the day. We have also a strategy which is just gathering dust. Can we elevate ourselves from the hand hoe to mechanization? Thank you.
Gentlemen, please make it very brief. We are out of time. We need to go on to our next engagement.
What has annoyed me most and continues to annoy me is that we exported decentralization to Kenya. But if you visit Kenya and you see the way they share the national cake between counties and the central government, you will be almost ashamed the way we do it here. But the point I want to contribute is about the way Ugandan society manages sex. I know it is not the way, I think the budget, the national budget is being let down by the way we manage sex. We have 5 million girls, according to the 2024 budget. 24% of them are impregnated before 18, and 30% of them are married off. 1 in 3. But we expect them to be productive enough to support very grand aspirations of the country. NDP and UNFPA study of 2020 told us we lose around 1.2 trillion Uganda shillings alone in health care for impregnated girls. Now, we have combed statistics since then. The NPA is very clear about that. We need to go back, get the national strategy for ending teenage pregnancy and child marriage, the whole of it, either ring-fence financing to see that it is implemented, or do something radical, because there is no middle income country or high level income country that can actually shoulder the burden of that liability. They need to be assets, they need to be productive, they need to make reasonable decisions at household level, they need to go to school, they need to be productive. Unless we do that, we shall create an ivory tower economy. 500 billion, but people will not be transformed.
All right, thank you very much. I'm sure the official from the Ministry of Finance and representing the PSST had that. That's a very pertinent issue that has come through. Ladies and gentlemen, I know we have a lot to submit on. I haven't had any specific question that has been shot to any of the panelists. I had loved that happen so we could have some clarification, but it has not happened. I'm going to give 1 minute to the gentleman who is looking straight at me, and please use that 1 minute.
Thank you so much for that opportunity. My name is Obuk Charles, a citizen, but also a staff at MOOPS. So my question is going to go to Dr. Yusuf. I know most of the things the other panelists have been talking about are almost repetitive. The technical side, I'm interested in the political side, because I also believe that the biggest issue in this country is the lack of the political will. For instance, every year we get the OAG's report. I saw one of recent where they were saying that about 465 billion was paid to staff of institutions that were rather, under RAPEX, but these same individuals are actually absorbed under the ministry. So literally they didn't lose their jobs, but they were paid for that terminal compensation. But also, if no one is going to take responsibility, no one is going to lose their job, no one is
Can
going
you
to.
shoot that question?
Then secondly, how do we deal with the culture of living rich when we're actually poor? For instance, I know that a retired Chief Justice continues to earn. And if you look at the benefits, they're too huge. Look at the former deputy presidents, they continue to earn. You look at Speaker of Parliament, we buy for them, clothes, shoes.
All right, thank
So,
you very much. That is understood.
and when you ask them, they will say it is part of the law. An MP who is an incumbent comes back to Parliament, we buy again for them new car. After we have just spent probably hundreds of millions to buy for them in the previous terms.
Okay.
Why can't we say we now only buy for those newcomers? So, but if you ask them, they will say it is part of the law. So how do we deal with that?
All right. Mr. Serum Kumar, can you answer the question of how to deal with emoluments of the speakers and vice presidents? If a vice president has been a deputy speaker and a speaker at the same time, all those are emoluments. I don't know.
Maybe I would just say one thing. Thank you so much for the question. I think you put two questions together. One is easier for me to respond to. One is slightly more difficult. The question of how do we, we live rich yet poor. I think that's a big sort of sociological neoliberal question. I don't know if we have enough time to go into the depth of our corrupted lives and the beauty of appearance. I don't know if we have enough time for that. Maybe after here, I think it might not be a good platform to enter into the depths of that. But on the other question, I have just one comment. There's an article by a friend of mine which I constantly reference. There's a guy called Kalundi Sedmaga. He wrote a piece where he said Parliament was the bribe. It's not the money that people get when they, enter the house, but the house itself. Under this sort of democratic circus, it becomes the bribe. It's a channel through which you channel some of the loot to the elite. People like, I'm sure Dr. Mhumza is under so much pressure to join Parliament because on the outside he's so critical. So how do you corrupt him? You invite him to the house, you throw at him humongous amounts of perks, and then he forgets the struggle. Right? So that is what you see, the amount of money people are getting, you know, from the top all the way to small offices. These are bribes.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
very
much.
much. On the question of emoluments for former civil servants or top government officials, I think that's a question we can have the PSST representative quickly respond to. I know I can be the vice president. I also get to be the deputy speaker and then be the speaker. And when I leave those positions, I get all the emoluments coming through. You deny me one, you'll be encroaching onto a fundamental right as enshrined in the law. How do we reform that? Can I have the microphone there?
Yeah, thank you, moderator, and the discussants for the comments. And I request you allow me also touch some of the other issues which I had picked.
Some of what?
Some of the other issues which I had picked.
All right.
Yes.
Very quickly.
So,
we'll be able to.
as regards to emoluments to former leaders, you know, these are laws that were passed at a time when the numbers were manageable. But as we talk now, the numbers have hit the ceiling, and so it requires a bold decision to review. And that now requires a concerted effort between us and you, the civil society, to cause that review. Yeah, those at some point becomes a little bit complicated. You know, one time in one of the institutions, we received an accounting officer who was frugal. He was coming from private sector. And he was mindful of how public officers use the vehicles. And he brought a policy proposal to install trackers, because the law says 5 o'clock park.
Yeah.
But then hours remain mobile. So he presents that proposal to a top management comprising public officers. So the police suffered a neonatal death. So those are some of the challenges we encounter under such circumstances. Another issue came up to do with the culture of people living rich, yet we are poor. You know, like you compared the culture of the people in China, loving to work together and loving their country. This concern here can be tamed by enforcing what we call social accountability. You know, I once a time hosted a colleague from America, and I sponsored a trip to Maction Falls Park. So while we were coming back, I bought him a baboon, a wooden baboon.
I was about to ask,
Hey.
where are you buying baboons?
Now, so as I handed over that baboon, he said, Ali, if I'm to carry this baboon back home, which is a form of a souvenir, I must have a receipt in my names. You can imagine, yes, that's what he told me. A receipt in his names. And so we had to ask that person to write the receipt in his names. Then, sometime last year, I visited him, and he took me to an eating place of a lower class. And he told me, you know, I know you people in your country, you love going to 5 stars. But for us, this is where I can able to defend myself. That because for them, if you are seen at a 5-star hotel having a meal, an onlooker can take you on. to inquire where you got that money that you can afford to go to a 5-star hotel to have that meal of 100 or 200,000. So that issue of social accountability can tame this kind of culture, but we have not yet been nurtured to that level. RAPEX, we had the same questions at the beginning of this reform, but when we consulted with the custodians of the law, their guidance was that as long as you are abolishing somebody's position, and there is a law which says that once you abolish that position, you have to pay the person, and so you have to pay the person. So we locked ourselves at the time we formulated the laws for those agencies. We had no option but to compensate. The other one was on funding for public universities. Yes, you raised that concern. I'm happy to report that in this second resource that we have just issued, public universities have received close to 100 billion and targeting infrastructure, research, and development. So we are pointing to that direction. Mechanization, we provided the money for these tractors to Ministry of Agriculture. That was last year. But the challenge they are raising and why they are failing to get people to allocate them to is the issue of land fragmentation. People do not have land big enough to require a tractor. So they can't afford to incur those costs to till those small pieces of land. The issue of China being able to no, I think the concern was on our exports being majorly done by foreigners. Yes, government is coming up with an export guarantee fund to support our own so that they are able so to participate in that business. So work is moving on. An issue was raised on the concern of consolidating revenue from state enterprises. We are currently working on a paper to ensure that these enterprises effectively participate in the financing and implementation of the budget. The only challenge we've been encountering is to do with the law. Because like we had a meet with some of them, and they were asking, I do not receive a coin from you. So why do you want me to submit my budget to you? And so we're trying also to justify that the money that you are using is coming from Ugandans. Why don't you want also to account for the Ugandan money and how you are using it? So, but we are in that process of engaging them to ensure that they come on board. Overfunded with low impact and then underfunded with high impact. You know, like you said, it is a dilemma. But the logic around this kind of scenario is to do with the enabler. You may find tourism having 300 billion and defense having 2 trillion. And then you say, why don't you give that 2 trillion to tourism and give defense the 300? When I reverse that ratio, even if tourism has 2 trillion, I may not get the trillion that I project to pick from tourism. So in some cases, that's the kind of dilemma we face, that if I don't overspend in certain areas, even the little in this area here may not give me the maximum outcome I wish to realize from there.
Okay.
So I think that is all I had to comment on. I beg to submit.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ali Tagole, for for that response. We are going to do 3 gestures. One that appreciates our panelists for the submissions, but also their time. The other will go to our partners, and then the last one will be to us. To our panelists, the clap will be simple. These guys are doctors, and they've studied, so you don't just go at them. We are going to do, and then you send it to them. All right? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much, our panelists. You can descend the stage. Ensure that you get in touch, speak to them. I'm sure there are some submissions and questions that you would love to engage on. They are very flexible and approachable individuals. Ladies and gentlemen, this dialogue is coming to a close, but before we close it, I would like to appreciate Makerere University Business School Economic Forum, Dr. Fred Muhumuza and the team and the board. Many thanks for the great work. Thank you for the partnership. Thank you for the belief in engagements like this. They go a long way in ensuring that what needs to be done is actually embarked on. Many thanks to World Vision, a critical partner with the CSWAG. Many thanks to the Advocates Coalition for Development and Environment, Dr. Arthur Bainomjisha and the team. Thanks to BRAC. BRAC are the people who have the money. Many thanks for being on board. And many thanks to you too, Advocacy Coalition for Sustainable Agriculture, SCSA, for coming through. Now, theirs is going to be flowers. We are going to give them some flowers. You don't want to shock people who have money with a lot of, give them their flowers. Please, everybody, to our partners, thank you very much for a good job. Now, we are going to be very selfish and abundant to ourselves. Let's give ourselves a clap. You've done a great job coming through and, of course, being part of this dialogue. Before we invite the Executive Director at CSPAC to round this up and give his closing remarks, I hope each one of us has a coupon that either looks like this or so that should be able to usher you to the lunch restaurant and then be able to work on our sugar levels that I believe right now have dropped. As we do that, before Mr. Julius Mukunda comes through, Wilberforce Onyango.
Yes.
There is something that is very pertinent, the QR code and the menti.com initiative. Please take us through that.
Thank you so much, Chris, and everyone for participating in this event. We are doing our assessment, and it requires you, if you have data on your phone, just type www.meti.com, then you enter the code, or you can scan, but you can say meti.com, and you enter the code. Meti.com, then you enter that code. Some of these codes are already on your tables, those papers, or you can do scanning. Some of you have been responding. It's a lively one which all of us will participate. These so far people have been participating. This so far male and female, and that's how it is. And I can see the number increasing. That's the number increasing. Those are gender, male and female. This is the age bracket. You want to know how many youth, how many above youth. Youth are 36, which means youth are feeling, and above youth are 19. Above 35, please. Maybe we have few here.
but also want to know which region of the country you come from. At regional level, central, you are doing well. What about western, eastern, northern? That's how it is. And the number increases as you log in. Those are the sectors people proposed. Which key sector should be given priority? National budget. You can see the one which I highlight so much is health, agriculture, education, human capital development. You can see them, infrastructure. Those one are highlighted high, that the one which people prefer so much. So Minister of Finance should look at these sectors and increase the funding in those sectors. There. Then overall of the objective, this we're evaluating the dialogue. We are saying strongly agreed. Then say agreed 0-0, which means the dialogue has been well defined and explained to everyone. Yeah. So we are saying the themes and the content of dialogue were relevant, informative, and delivered effectively. And most of us, we are saying strongly agree. You agree? Even agree man is nodding. They heard very well. We don't have a person who is saying disagree, is not disagreeing, and we don't have anybody who is saying strongly disagree. All of us, we strongly agree and agree. Panel discussion. The panel discussion stayed on topic and pertinent to the issues during the meeting. Strongly agree, yes, agree. But there's one who's saying, are you sure? Disagree. Are you sure, really? When it's holding the West, say, are you sure? One person disagree. Maybe will give us the reason why, maybe the reasons. Then lastly, what else should be included, changed if the event occurs again? These are the views. Time allocation should be increased to allow increased submission of ideas, to analyze budget per sector. Somebody proposed a theme, tenfold growth responsive budgeting. Yeah, these are the few things, engaging stakeholders at different sectors, which are crucial at national development. So friends, almost over 122, they are feeling it. That's the end of our assessment. Thank you so much.
I would like to invite Mr. Julius Mukunda to come and deliver his closing remarks. Thank you.
Yes, a round of applause for our moderator, please. I was a bit worried that we might not finish, but as usual, he has done a commendable work. Thanks to our panelists, thanks to our partners, MOOBS, World Vision, Black, Oxfam, Acode, and all others, Education Out Loud, for really helping us to have this done. Just quickly is, I think, a few takeaways. I think one of them is that we have known that our budget has now increased 78 trillion. Domestic resource mobilization is going to shoot to 41. I am, for me, excited about the 1.4 from oil revenues. I'm going to see how it's going to come in, because if there is anybody who really looking forward for this oil revenue, is myself. But I think competing priorities amidst a constrained budget, I think that's an area that is coming out strongly, is that we have so many priorities, but the fiscal space is small. If you heard what Ali said, almost half of the budget is already gone, so budgeted for, allocated. So I think it's something that we need to think through on how we can expand the fiscal space. Budget reforms must focus on structures. not just numbers. So repurposing the budget requires restructuring expenditures to have the proper priorities. We can actually create fiscal space through reprioritization of our programs. We know definitely that we can free up resources without increase the borrowing by eliminating low productivity expenditures, really. The consumptive expenditure we have been talking about. Economic transformation requires difficult policy decisions. And I think this came out very clearly that you can't have your cake and you want to eat at the same time. You need to agree what you need to do. That there's those serious issues we need to think about. And I think the question of UTR came out very well. We love it so much. But really, these are some of the things you want to sit, close your eye and say, let it go. And then you move on. We need to foster fiscal discipline, especially on budget ceilings to avoid excessive supplemental expenditure. And I think that was very critical and very important. Boosting revenue mobilization remains very critical. And I think that's, for me, is something that came out very well. We might not need to increase the rates, and Adam is telling us where the money is already. Can we support local governments, see how they can really collect more money? I'm a supporter of taxing commercial agriculture. Because really at the end of the day is, you are a market vendor, you are paying. But somebody makes a trip of a roll of matoke twice a week, but he's nowhere to be seen in the tax bracket. Really. At the end of the day is that our tax really tends to be unfair, especially on other Ugandans. Ladies and gentlemen, I can promise you that issues here, we are going to consolidate into a report. We share all, put on our website. The next thing that is going to come up is the budget process actually is, we are now in the middle of it. The next process is that the ministerial policy statements are likely to come out early 14th April, 15th March. 2 weeks to come. Parliament is going to start debating now the real things, the 78 trillion. So let's prepare ourselves. Some of these issues are not in the BFP. Let's see how we can put them into the ministerial process and budget at the parliamentary level. So that at least we can be able to see that some of the things can be included. And after that, we know National Budget Month is also likely to come up. Please tune in and listen, as then we see how we can end this particular budget process. In a special way, please join me to thank Ministry of Finance for regularly being with us. Ali, Paul, and the team, please, thank you so much. Send our regards to the PSST. Send our regards to the Minister for Finance, that we have this strange relationship, but it is working. We propose very hard things to you. You happen to take a few of them. We congratulate you for really taking them on. The difficult ones we keep on pushing, because somebody said, whatever happens, this is Uganda, we are not going anywhere. Nobody is going to be exported. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day, and see you next time.